Weird. Oh. Oh yeah, we need to set this up, huh? Let me turn this down. Actually, we're gonna have to turn it all the way off, I think. So let me audio this down at least a little bit there. I'm gonna have to pull up a separate window for the other thing. YouTube. Pull that tab out. Pull that little buddy out of here. YouTube. Mute that. Oh wait. History.
I'm like, holy shit. This is not public.
Someone inside the United States government gave that to you.
That's correct. The FBI pointed guns at me and took my reporter's notebooks. Because I have to call my lawyer.
Get out
And the moment that I unlock my phone, they snatched the phone out of my hand because I unlocked the phone. Now the FBI has access to all of my signal messages. Do you know what's in my signal messages? All the people in the government that come to me with information.
And then they raid your house.
Correct. That is the justification for the raid against James O'Keefe.
So it means they can do whatever they want.
That's a question that Dan Bongino and Kash Patel need to answer.
It's a good point.
Will
They
they?
need to answer.
If you want something that is revolutionary, a breakthrough, it's Diddy because he's alive.
What is the thing that needs to be on video in your mind?
Oh, it's very easy for me.
Tell me.
I've never, ever talked about it on any podcast.
Right.
Ever. This is the first time.
I commit to you that I will do this. This is also very dangerous, wouldn't you admit, to do these stories?
Well, you subscribe to this lifestyle.
I almost feel like they're concerned that I'm going to like record them trying to bribe me, which I would.
Of course.
Did you ever think you would make it?
How do I set that there, to be honest?
I know this life meant for me.
Adam, what's your point? The future looks bright.
My handshake is better than anything I ever signed. Right here.
No, that's not it.
You are a one-of-one.
My son's right
I don't think I've ever said this before.
I had it up
Oh,
there.
he is. Oh, you got to be kidding me.
Yes, he is.
Positive.
I'm certain of it. Yes.
We're live right now, though.
We're live.
Yeah. So he is part of the Skako family.
Correct. Yes.
So, okay, folks, first of all, if you're tuning in, James, the last time we sat down was February of 2022, roughly 3.5 years.
Yes.
Obviously, nothing's happened since then for you. Life's been the same. It's been normal. You know,
Boring.
everything's going good. But last night, you sent me this documentary, and I'm leaving town, so I'm going out of the country. And I said, listen, let's see if we can do a podcast before we leave. And then last night, I sit there, I'm going through, it's called The Truth of Project Veritas, Part 1, that just came out this week. And the more I'm watching it, I'm like, you got to be. So this is what happened here, because originally, when the whole scandal took place, I was like, oh, you know what, James O'Keefe, what was he up to? He was spending money. He was doing this. He was taking helicopter rides. He was taking one too many Ubers and black cars and all this stuff. This is what you kind of see in then your apology letter. But walk us through what happened with
Did he have an
Project
apology
Veritas.
letter?
Thank you for having me. This film I've released, The Truth Inside Veritas, takes you inside of Project Veritas, which fired me 2.5 years ago. And it shows you
I didn't know
what
that.
happened at the board meeting
Yeah.
where they were throwing all these grievances out at me. You hear the grievances, you meet the employees, and you meet this board member in federal court because they sued me. So they fired me. They indefinitely suspended me without pay, a.k.a. terminated me. So I just started a new organization called OMG O'Keefe Media Group, which I've been doing. And then they sued me to try to shut OMG down. So in this deposition footage, in the video tapes from federal court, depositions are public proceedings. I took the depositions, I put them in the movie, and you see what happened. And it's an insane story. It's a crazy story.
Yeah, well, so the events, the sequencing of the events, which is kind of weird, is when you got the big Pfizer, one of the directors that talks about what they were
Pfizer.
doing, Rob, if you want to go through the timeline. So the sequencing was kind of weird. When you first are, I want to see if I got the dates here or not. Let me see. Yeah, right there, January 2023. You know, we hear about the
I'll gold seal it.
under your leadership, release an undercover video featuring a man identified as Jordan Tristan Walker. This is the one that he's running out.
Yeah, this
And
is the biggest story.
Another
This is the
one?
biggest story,
ever.
guys, at the peak.
The director, the mRNA director of scientific research at Pfizer, talking about mutating the virus at Pfizer. This video was viewed an insane amount of times. I confront this guy, if you remember this. I confronted him with a microphone, and he physically assaulted me.
That's right, I remember that.
And he took the iPad out of my hand and he smashed it on the ground.
Yep.
This is
Diamond.
the gay date, the gay guy at Pfizer. YouTube took it down. It's still on X, and he's talking about directed evolution at Pfizer, something that Pfizer denies, but he says it. He's a director at the company, and we released this video, and I confront him in a restaurant in New York City. And a week later, I was removed from Project Veritas. So conspiracy theories were abound. Did Pfizer bribe somebody? Did they put pressure on people? This is the guy, Jordan Walker. There he is right there.
Change your music.
Oh, I remember this guy.
Yeah, this is a Yale-educated doctor, director, high up within Pfizer Pharmaceutical. And there he is freaking out. Grabbed the iPad out of my hand. My cameraman had to,
Push him
in
up.
self-defense, push him away because he was physically assaulting me. You could probably find
And then
a
he
better
grabs it.
a better video there. Oh, there's the one of him undercover. Click on that. Pfizer ultimately is thinking about mutating COVID, the undercover journalist asked. And he said, well, that is not what we say to the public. No, don't tell this to don't tell anybody what I'm telling you. Promise me you won't tell anybody.
Can we hear the audio of this guy saying
ahead.
this, Rob? Go back a little bit. Yeah, this part, I hope there's no Titanic music in the background, but go ahead.
I'm not sure if you have audio on the clip.
And James, while he's looking for this, how in the world can you expose something like this guy, plain and simple, and then and nothing happens? Like nothing happens. The truth is
to him or
But
to
no,
me?
let's stay on this.
Okay,
Let's
I'm sorry.
sequencing. Vinny,
Okay, my bad.
let's stay on this. So while this is happening, this is being released. Okay, do you have the audio, Rob, or no?
I do. Let's see.
Our undercover journalist asked
So you're
Walker
on a
how
date with him
Pfizer
or
has
somebody
handled
else
the
is on a
fact
date
that
with him?
COVID vaccines are ineffective against virus variants. What he said is disturbing. Listen to this.
We're exploring, like, now, you know how the virus keeps mutating?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we're exploring is, like, why don't we just mutate it ourselves so we could preemptively develop new vaccines, right? So we have to do that. If we're going to do that, though, there's a risk of, like, as you could imagine, no one wants to be having a pharma company mutating fucking viruses.
Yeah.
So we're like, do we want to do this? So that's, like, one of the things we're considering.
Okay.
Like, the future, like, maybe we could, like, create new versions of the vaccines and things like that.
Okay, so Pfizer
So now,
ultimately
to the
is
audience
thinking
who may
about
not remember this, okay, we reacted to this multiple times.
Okay.
But how high-ranking of a person is it?
Pretty high.
Okay,
Fairly
pretty
high.
high-ranking.
At the
These
time when
two
I
are
released
under
this,
the director, the
the
CEO.
mainstream media were like, well, we don't know if that's really a Pfizer director. They denied that this guy was who he was. I got internal Microsoft Teams messages from sources within Pfizer that confirmed he was who he said he was. He's a director, high up in the company, two below the chief executive officer.
Oh, what's up,
And,
Calico?
yeah, high-ranking guy.
Okay, so when that happens, you release that.
This is one of
What
the
happens-
only
give me the
journalists on
sequencing of
planet
what
Earth, by
happens
the
when
way.
Project Veritas trying to fire you. The 25 employees.
Yeah.
There's probably a
Yeah,
couple
turn
other
against you.
ones,
What
but this
happened
is
there?
the only
Yeah,
one
so
I'm
this
aware
was
of.
released January 26, 2023. January 25th, pardon me. The confrontation with him was released the very next day in Brooklyn. It was just filmed in a pizza restaurant in Brooklyn. And then board meeting was on February the 6th, where they brought in a 6.5-hour grievance session. Out of 75 employees, about 12 employees spoke with these grievances, which is what you watched
Yeah.
in the documentary.
Publicly assassinate
And then
you.
on February the 10th, they indefinitely suspended me without pay, a.k.a. fired me from Project Veritas.
Now, the claims they made is you fired a CFO and you fired, is it Hinckley or what's his first name?
Yes, Barry Hinckley.
Barry Hinckley. So he was the chief strategy officer, if I'm
Correct.
not mistaken.
Correct.
So walk me through what their concern was. Because like, you don't have the right to fire the CFO or the chief strategy officer. Like, I'm the CEO, the founder. What do you mean I can't fire
They
these
said
guys?
that I was wrong for me to fire the chief financial officer.
Who is they? The board?
The board? These individuals that you saw in the film.
Right.
They, it's got their names: Matthew Tiermond, George Skakel, other individuals who no one knows their names, Joe Barton, but these
What
board
the
members
talking
said
heads?
James does not have the authority, and it turns out I did have the authority.
I mean, it's good to have
And the
context for
chief
sure. Give me a
financial officer
second.
sent me a message on February.
Guy on left. I have a weird setup here, so I probably killed it. No, actually, I didn't kill it. The guy on left is just the podcaster. The other guy on the left-hand side is like his producer. Now, I don't know how many people are aware of this, but James O'Keefe... Oh, let me pull this down, because I'm going to need both screens for this. Let me go main menu. I was actually kind of vaguely aware of James O'Keefe. But more mainstream people may be more aware. Let's just do a James O'Keefe. So, all right. American political activist who founded Project Veritas. They classified as far right. An absolute smear. This guy gets smeared constantly because he's like one of the few people on planet Earth that probably actually, like, he fucks around with very powerful people constantly. So I'm gonna see if I can find some of his, like, he went undercover with Acorn. Recently he got the Attorney General Pam Bondi saying something crazy. There's a couple other ones. Yeah, it looks like Wikipedia has straight smeared O'Keefe. I can't use this as a source. This is crazy. This is exactly what you would do to an actual journalist. Heavily edited to portray Acorn workers as seemingly aiding a couple in criminal planning. Heavily edited. That's clearly bias. This is crazy. I didn't know it was this bad in this thing. I guess I haven't really looked at it before. I mean, I'm not surprised. Let me ask Gronk. It's not. Well, that's not what I wanted. Give me 4 big stories. James O'Keefe. Exposed. I just need a generality so I remember. All right, he's been doing this a long time. In 2009, O'Keefe gained national attention with undercover videos targeting the Associated Community Organizations Reform, now Acorn. Posing as a pimp, he recorded conversations suggesting Acorn employees were willing to assist with illegal activities such as tax evasion and running a brothel. The videos led to significant backlash, resulting in Congress voting to defund Acorn, which contributed to the organization's collapse. He did get sued by Acorn for $100K. NPR released videos showing NPR fundraisers, particularly Ron Stiller, making controversial statements during a staged meeting with individuals posing as potential donors to a Muslim group. The video suggested NPR had a liberal bias and led Stiller's resignation and significant embarrassment for NPR. Critics, including journalists from the Washington Post and Time, noted videos were selectively edited, misrepresenting the full context. Planned Parenthood, CNN. Releasing undercover footage of John Bonifield, suggesting that was covered to the Trump-Russia investigation was driven by ratings and lacked substance. Another CNN video featured CNN anchor Van Jones calling the story Nothing Burger. Videos seem to expose media bias, but criticized for targeting a health and medical producer rather than political. Yeah, there's always a reason why none of this is real to the mainstream media. But I think this guy's a real one, to be honest. James O'Keefe is what I would view as, like, while he's not perfect, because nobody's perfect, he's as close to a perfect journalist as I can think of. And the fact that everything I pull on him is a conspiracy theory and unsubstantiated by other big corporate journalist entities tells me actually is a green flag that he's a real one. Because the more you touch power and you start trying to fuck around with it and expose them, the more they will try to destroy you in the public eye. So everything I pull on James O'Keefe doesn't say anything good about him, discredits him across the board, all from the corporate media. So that's actually a green flag for me. So he has so what happened, I don't really know what happened. So all of those things he did, it was through something called Project Veritas that he was the founder and CEO, and apparently, like, I think, okay, this is a little bit more tough, but there's certain structure in a nonprofit that I think you need at least 3 or 4 separate like board members on the nonprofit for like legality reasons. I don't know the entire structure, okay? This is just how I generally think I might understand it a little bit. The details don't really matter. What matters is that he had 3 or 4 people or 5 people on his board. He was CEO. And over the course of the last couple of years, they were breaking the nonprofit's rules, like putting investments into things that they had been like doing research on, which kind of breaks the nonprofit thing. And then they all got together and voted him out of the CEO role, literally fired him from his own company that he founded. And this is him talking about it. But I think there's like a rule. There's a bunch of rules with nonprofits. And one of them, I think, is the people on the board can't have investments or anything to any of the entities that they're like in the middle of investigating or working on. Like, you can't have these conflicts of interest. Like, you have to follow like strict rules to be a nonprofit, and the board members were breaking those rules unbeknownst, according to O'Keefe. And then when he started to realize it, they removed him from the entire company. So that's just how I think I understand it, just in general. But yeah, just for anybody else that's in chat that wanted a little more context. I don't know all the rules on nonprofit. I just know they exist, and I know some of them. But in order to make my point, I don't need to be like, I don't need to have like every detail, even though I'm kind of like that person. But I'm always learning new stuff. Anyway, but yeah, this is him. Just the 2 people on the left don't really matter, other than they have a pretty big podcast for interviewing a lot of different people. The podcast space is actually huge to get like real information, which is why I'm almost exclusively in here when I do research and look into stuff. Long form format where somebody has to really explain stuff and people get to ask questions and go back and forth is my main way of like learning how stuff works. Oh, uh-oh. I don't want you open. Yeah, no problem. I try to provide context if I have it, for sure. No, remind me later. Get out of here. I don't want that. That's not it either. What happened to my... Who took my window away? Wait, what? Did I close it accidentally? There's no way. I mean, there was a way. Okay, whatever. It should have it saved. No, I like providing context. So.
On February the 2nd, saying, we're going to have an emergency board meeting to remove you, James O'Keefe, as CEO. I was like taking off on an airplane at the time. I was like, this is the Twilight Zone. I said, what are you going to say to the public? Do you have a press release written? They said, no, the public doesn't need to know. So for me, it was like, are you kidding me? Like, this was like the Twilight Zone.
Were they using counsel to threaten you to follow every order they were giving you, or else? Is that kind of what they were doing to you, intimidation?
Why can't I move this?
No, it was just this is the story of what, this is such a crazy story. They weren't threatening me. They were just informing me that they were going to remove me as the CEO of the company. So my number 3 guy saying, we're going to remove you and restructure the company. I said, okay, you're fired. This is not going to happen. I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to let you do this because it's going to destroy the organization if you do this. And this is the phone call we're having as the airplane.
He's the face of Veritas. So everybody that knows Project Veritas knows James O'Keefe.
February the 2nd. All of this is in this film I just released.
It's like getting rid of Iron Man, but having the Iron Man story, or Batman and get rid of Batman.
On the
Like
6th, that's Monday, February the 6th, 2023. A week or so after video you just watched, and that's where you had this bizarre struggle session, Maoist struggle session, where they marched in employees, and it was almost like employees went on strike, and said, we don't like James O'Keefe. He's a mean boss. He works us too hard. And they had these weird grievances, and you could hear all the grievances in the film.
One time apparently you ate a 8-month pregnant woman's sandwich, which she later on came back and talked about.
Yes. The pregnant lady said it didn't happen.
Yeah, she said it didn't happen, but they literally said you ate an 8-month pregnant woman's sandwich.
I stole a pregnant woman's sandwich. I took, Barry Hinckley said, I took black SUVs around. He said, you shouldn't be transporting the CEO around like this. A bunch of really strange accusations, which never made sense to anybody. Anybody watching was like, this is insane. And questions are, how could this happen? Why could this? So many things to dive into here about what went down.
So on George Skakel, Rob, if you can pull this up. Now, the George Skakel I keep pulling up is Ethel Kennedy's father. Ethel Kennedy married RFK, the Bobby Kennedy's father, the AG who got assassinated. So you're saying that George Skakel family is related to the George Skakel that was one of the board members?
Yes, to be clear, Ethel Kennedy, the Kennedys and the Skakels are two famous families. Kennedy's Democrats, Skakels Republicans. Ethel Kennedy is the mother of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Mm-hmm.
This same Ethel Kennedy is the aunt of that man right there, George Skakel. So they are, in fact, related.
So they are, in fact, related.
Yes.
Okay, so George Skakel, when the conversation comes about, at the end of the documentary, when he says, hey, you can never have a house like this. Is it all about money? How much money do you make? Is it all about money for you? Yeah, I bet you can never have a house like that. And he's got a nice house that's to the side. How did he make his money?
That's not exactly clear to me, but his father's grandfather founded a company. I forgot the name of the company. Big company. Probably find it online here. Was it Carbide or Union Lake Carbide? Some type of coal processing.
I don't know that company.
So it's generational money. So it's like a third generation, fourth generation money.
Correct.
Okay, I got it. So when he said when they asked the question and they said, so how much money did James O'Keefe steal, or whatever the question was? And he says $785,023, or $785,023.
Yeah.
And
pretty
he asked the question,
exact.
so how'd you come up with that number? I can't tell you. What was he talking about?
He literally just made it up under oath. He was flippant. He was being it's a remarkable piece of footage. He's under oath. This is a federal deposition. Your audience might be asking, how can O'Keefe play courtroom videos? Depositions aren't under seal, meaning they're public proceedings. It's videotaped.
Yep.
He's under oath.
That's right.
In a federal courtroom proceeding, and the attorney asks, you allege that James O'Keefe owes you money or stole money. How much did James steal? And
Right
this
here,
man,
he has it. He found it. Watch this clip.
What you owe first, and then we can start talking about it. I'm interested to know
Can you lower
how
the
much James
speed a
O'Keefe
little
owes you.
bit?
Yes, sorry.
Playback speed to normal. There you go. Watch this.
Oh, $785,000.23.
How did you arrive at that figure?
With a
23 cents?
algorithm I cannot reveal.
That's so
because it's
specific. That's like a liar
It's
tactic.
based on the employment agreement.
Obviously, he looks very honest here.
Yeah.
How many violations did you identify?
27.
27 violations of the employment agreement. And that led you to what figure?
I just told you I'm not repeating my answer.
Is that analysis?
Because he
in
just
your
made up the
documents
number.
you
No,
provided
it's
us
not.
today? Is it done in your head?
He doesn't remember the number.
Where else?
Well, I'm not allowed to disclose that.
I mean, these people were just impeaching all of their
Let me
credibility.
okay, so this guy, George Skakel, when he's saying that,
What?
prior to them coming after you, you dropped the Pfizer thing. That it talks about 4 companies he's invested in. One of them, I don't know how many of them was pharma. What was his link? If there is any theories to say, well, the reason why he did this because they got a phone call saying this, What are some speculations that you have that caused them to want to fire you right after the biggest story you guys ever dropped with Project Veritas?
Well, there was another clip in the deposition. You could pull it up here in a minute, but he says that these companies could, this is his quote, could be sold to Pfizer.
That's right.
That's what he says. And these companies, now when you're in a nonprofit organization that investigates these things, we have to sign a conflict of interest policy.
Right.
That's
what
it is.
Very important in my
Conflict of
business.
interest
Infinitely
policy.
more important than any other business. If you have financial investments in these companies, you have to disclose
Sure.
that. I did not know this, but every one of my board members were co-investing in these companies without my knowledge. They were
Jesus, dude.
soliciting money from each other to put into these companies, and I didn't know it until I got to this lawsuit. And this is an ongoing lawsuit.
He found it. This is the clip. If you want to play that clip, probably about 3 or 4 companies.
Holy shit, dude.
You just had it. Go for it.
The only thing that has changed is that we broke the biggest story in our organization's history. It was a story that was so big that it was a combination of the board thinking they finally could do this without James O'Keefe, but also maybe some conflicts of interest per their own words.
Is it fair to say that 3 of the 4 companies you've invested in, you would consider to be in the medical field?
Or Petrogen could be sold to a big pharma.
Like Pfizer?
Could.
You agree with me? What, Pfizer could be a candidate for
Maybe, potential,
acquisition?
yeah. I mean, I think if I was a banker, you'd be crazy not to let Pfizer know that it was available.
Yeah, it turns out I was up against all these people who were financially aligned.
We can pause it right there, Ron. Yeah, so 3 or 4 companies. James, the board members that you had, if you can give a...
Put me on the board,
one,
dude.
How did you find them? 2, profile, because if I'm on your board and you're having to raise $2 million a month, because this thing takes a lot of work. The whole $24 million you were talking about, they said, well, we want you to stop raising money. How the hell do you want the company to run
That's
if we can't raise the
precisely
money?
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you bring these guys in, don't they have to be 100% locked in to realize who you are? Like, everybody knows, what you're going to do and what you're not going. You're an Acorn guy. When you drop that whole Acorn story, going to an event with an underage hooker that you showed up to as a pimp.
Awesome.
And yeah. Come on in. And I think you were with Breitbart at that time, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So don't these guys who are part of your board members know who they have as the product that they're marketing?
The problem was nobody was willing to be on my board. The people that I trusted and respected the most said, I can't be on your board.
I got
Listen,
you.
I'll write you a $100,000 check.
Oh, that
This is
sucks,
nonprofit,
dude.
Tax-deductible money.
Yeah.
The most trustworthy people will
excuse
excuse themselves from it.
Because
Oh my god, dude.
It's too risky for me. The liabilities, Pat, the liabilities of what I do approach infinity. I've been sued dozens of times. There's no, at least not yet, I hope to make it sustainable and profitable. There's no profit in this. You can't become wealthy doing this. Why? Because you get sued so much. And
That's
the legal
true.
fees on the balance sheet, the liabilities always outweigh the assets. So you have to be a little nuts, at least in the right way, to do this. You have to be.
You're fully not. No, you are. You're qualified
In
to be able to.
certain ways, I am.
Yeah.
But the problem is if you the self-interest is a very powerful motivator for people,
Oh
and the
my
instinct
God,
for self-preservation is extremely powerful. So when you get raided by the FBI, which we were,
Oh,
in
dude, I need to do a
2021,
whole
year
video on
before
that.
this
How many
happened,
people have
and
been
you're
raided by the
getting sued
FBI?
everybody. The problem is if you're not messianic, if you're not mission-driven, corruption.
Why would you let them be on your board?
So that was my mistake. That was my mistake. I did not discern this. And I had a founder's board. I
Oh,
knew
he
these
learned
guys
the
from
hard
10
way how
years
the world
prior,
actually
right, when I
works.
was
Oh,
scrapping,
poor
when I
guy,
had
man.
nothing. And they were willing. So the mistake that I made is they were willing to be on the board, and I said okay. And I couldn't find anybody. The hardest thing about
How many
what
do
I
you need?
What's that?
How many board members do you need?
501c3s require a minimum of 3, but you really should
That's
have
what it
5
is.
optically.
How many
Oversight.
did you have at the peak?
I had 3 at Project Veritas 501c3, and then I had 3 at 501c4, and they combined the boards when they did this. They just put everyone on the same board.
So 6. That's an even number, though. Is Is it a 6 equal voting, or the one that votes on a 501c4 doesn't have influence over the 501c3?
There were only 3 board members when they did this, and it was a 2-to-1 vote. Just a 2-to-1 vote.
Who was the one?
Well, I was the third board member, so I was opposed, of course, to this. So it was Tiermont and Garvey, John Garvey. And then they combined the other board, which was George Skakel and Joe Barton and a man named Steve Olemic, who's now deceased.
So it became 4-1.
It became
5-1.
5-1.
Okay, so profile of those guys.
Excuse me, 4-2 when Steve Olemic voted against it.
He's the one that passed away.
Correct.
So he was with you.
He actually committed suicide. You can't make this stuff up. It was a 4-2 vote when they combined the boards and they voted to indefinitely suspend. Yeah.
Oh my God! How did they all commit suicide?
It was within the year after this happened.
And is there any stories of why he came? Is it non-related to this event? Did this event caused so much trauma that he just didn't want to deal with it?
I don't know. It may be unrelated. I don't know.
Okay, maybe unrelated. Of the 4 board members that were against you, we just learned a little bit about Skakel. Can you tell us a little bit about the other 3?
Absolutely. And there should be some clips in this film to back up what I'm saying. As you know, I like to make factual statements. Matthew Tiermont was the number 1 orchestrator,
this makes me
top
sick.
guy. And you want to take you through a little bit of each of these guys. Matt Tiermont, I was on a boat in the Bahamas, Pat, about 8-9 years ago with a big supporter, big philanthropist. And he said to me, "You have to beware of this man." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because this man is incredibly jealous of you, James. And he wants to be you. You need to get him off your board."
Fucking rats,
Now, at the time,
bro.
I didn't know what that meant. I was like, oh, what does that mean? He admires me? I didn't have any life experience to inform me what could happen to someone who wants to be you. But apparently people saying this guy was very envious. He wanted to, you know, to be me or to have what I have, whatever that. We could talk about that. That's Matthew Tiermont, the guy who orchestrated everything. And there are some insane, pornographic, obscene messages he sent me. Now, Matthew Tiermont was soliciting the board members to put money into his companies that he is for-profit Wall Street. He worked on Wall Street. He has an economics degree from the University of Chicago. His father was a famous Polish anti-communist dissident. A lot of these guys had fathers who were wealthy and famous. So one theory is that they lived in the shadow of their fathers. We could talk more about him in a minute. There's George Skakel, who we've been talking about. There's a man named Joseph Barton. There's federal deposition clips of him in the film. Joe Barton said some pretty crazy things in his deposition. He said, "I'm not entitled to a private life," so these guys were publishing messages about my personal life with my girlfriend. There's a man named John Garvey,
these fucking
who is
rats,
about to be
bro.
deposed. He hasn't yet been deposed. And then there's Steve Olemic, who committed suicide. Those are the board members.
Jesus.
Of the 4, how many of them have you had communication with since they fired you?
These guys have been obsessively posting and tweeting on X about me nonstop for the last 2 years. Crazy stuff, demonic stuff. You wouldn't even believe me unless I pulled it up on the screen.
One of the ones, which one was the one that kept texting? I love you. Listen, I feel so bad about what's going on. And then afterwards, you're a motherfucker, you know, all this stuff. So how often did that happen? Was that board members or were those employees?
You're referring to in the film, these are some of the employees. Now again, at Project Artist, people don't realize when I came on your show, we had like 65, 70 employees. That's a lot of people. And you saw about 12 or so were acting in this demonic way. You're referring to a couple of the younger employees who were behaving like this. So they came in the boardroom. They said, "O'Keefe's a mean boss. He yelled at me one time. He's
Who
a power
gives a
drunk
fuck,
tyrant."
bro?
And then a week
Like,
later,
even if that was
they
true,
would
who
send me
cares?
an Instagram. "I'm so sorry. I feel horrible for what I did. I never should have done this." And then, like, a few
People are
months later, they're
manipulated
calling
so
me-
easily.
I can't even say it on the air, but horrible, expletive words on the DMs.
So now, are you at a point that because to us, when it happened, the first thing I said is, I don't know what Project Veritas is without O'Keefe, and I know they don't like to hear that. A lot of times people think, certain organizations
The ego,
can
man.
get the same kind of
Every
results
time.
without the face. most companies can survive without a face. Most companies could. And you're like, oh my God, Apple will never make it without Steve Jobs. Apple goes from a $100 billion company when Steve Jobs
I
dies.
disagree with that.
Tim
Apple
Cook
hasn't
did a
been the
great job.
same,
It's a
but
$3 trillion company.
I see his
He
point.
30x what Steve Jobs had,
Right.
right? But this is a small.
They haven't invented
nonprofit
anything
that, like,
since
when I
Steve
said
Jobs
you're
left.
Crazy enough to do stuff like this. The average person doesn't wake up saying, let me go expose Pfizer in the middle of all the shit that's going on. Let me go expose Acorn and have the guy I work with suddenly have a heart attack that nobody knows what's going on. And then Michael Cormier, who is the leading I don't know what role he had, and then he all of a sudden dies, and they don't know what he died from.
They're saying arsenic poisoning in the L.A. coroner's
So
office.
the average person doesn't want to do your job. The average person just wants to consume the content you create. So Project
That's such
Veritas,
dangerous content.
we saw one of the recent clips, and the most common question everybody asks is, wait a minute, why does it say Veritas and OMG, right? O'Keefe Media Group.
Right.
What was that all about? Are you at a point right now where Veritas is coming back under you or not yet?
Yeah, so they're on the verge of bankruptcy. When I was
course.
raising $2 million a month,
They don't know how to create anything.
$24 million
If they're going
a
to do
year,
that to somebody.
it's a lot of money to raise as a non-profit. Remember, there's no annuities. You have to ask people for money.
Constantly.
Yeah.
And when they got rid of me, the donations just stopped. Everybody wanted their money back. And in that board meeting, I had one trump card because these guys it was like a struggle session. They just wanted to make me feel abused. It was a lot of envy and just petty human things this is not unique. It happens in a lot of organizations. But to your point, what are they going to do if they get rid of the guy who's raising all the funds? They didn't have an answer and they didn't care. Now, in the movie, I noticed your producer had that 54-minute movie. If you can find this moment where it's about 3/4 of the way through towards the end of that board meeting, that's the guy, Matthew Tierman. You just saw him on the screen right there. There was a quote that's incredibly important. And I said, point of order, what are you guys going to do? Because that's the trump card I had. What's your plan? Okay, you want to lash me. You want to crucify me. You want to make me feel abused. And Tierman says something, and I hope we can pull it up. That same guy, he goes, we have 65 employees. We're going to be fine without James O'Keefe.
Okay.
They actually believed, or they wanted to believe.
Not for a product like this.
But you see, that's so interesting.
Yeah, we're going to get rid of Batman, and Batman will be the
Because when you're
same.
that envious, when you're that resentful, when you're that deluded, there it is, right there.
Right
You
there,
got it.
yeah.
65 employees. You just passed it a moment ago.
My question is, what is the plan of if you implement this solution?
Project Veritas is an organization that has 65 incredibly talented individuals who are capable of doing journalism. We don't believe that there will be any lost output on the margin.
Cut.
They're looking at it like money.
So they
Oh my
actually
God, bro.
believed that there wouldn't be any lost output on the margins.
How are people so fucking
Literally
stupid?
the exact opposite happened. Every donor wanted their money back. Nobody trusted anything they had to say. Now they believed, but content is king. Our journalism matters. But the problem, what they failed to understand is investigative journalism is all about trust.
Yeah.
And if you behave like this, nobody's going to trust anything that you report. And I think that's what they failed to understand. But Matthew Tierman actually believed that Project Veritas didn't need James O'Keefe anymore.
So they also apparently lost 200,000 followers, like within days of us, the audience finding out that you're no longer tied to them. So even the Veritas account, I don't know what it was, but I saw somewhere that they lost a couple 100,000 followers as well. So what number did that $24 million go down to?
The revenue, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, it was zero. Negative.
Because they have to
There was
ask
one
for money.
individual. I can't name
They're a
the donors under
nonprofit.
the Freedom of Association.
Yeah,
or
you
the
can't
First
name
Amendment,
them.
But one donor said, I want my $1 million check back. The chief financial officer said, it's unlawful for us to return your check. That's not true. The donors wanted their money back, so they went deeply into debt. So when I left, there was somewhere around $10 million in cash and no debt. And now they're like $2 million in debt with no cash.
So is it gonna come back to you? Or is that where you are where Project
Eventually. And the people, your audience might be wondering, well, why can't O'Keefe talk about the specifics of the negotiations? Because I promised the court I won't, and I'm a man of my word. On settlement negotiations, you can't talk about the details. I can talk about the proceedings. That's public. I
Yeah,
just
the
can't
public
talk
part
about the
you can,
details
yeah.
of the so-called settlement the talks of acquiring or getting the information back. All I can tell you is that I'm in talks to reacquire Project Veritas.
When you put that Project Veritas on the back of that most recent video that you did, why
Yes.
did you do that?
Because we had filmed a video in front of that brick wall, big brick wall backdrop. We literally brick by brick rebuilt the Project Veritas studio here in West Palm Beach, Florida, where I now live, because I was imminently about to announce that I'm reacquiring Project Veritas.
Oh, so it wasn't finalized yet. So did you have permission from them to use that? Can you use that? Was that a conversation you had with them?
There's no trademark of the logo. In fact, I've applied for the trademark myself, so I'm
Good.
allowed to use
Good
it.
for you, man.
I'm allowed to report. The same reason I'm allowed to report on the court proceedings, for sure.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
good
look,
part.
the work you do and did is not everyone's work. It's not something everyone wants to do, nor can do in the manner that you do it, because you stay poised and calm in the moments that you're in, and you get in the faces of people yet
Dude, you
still
have to be
stay
almost
respectful.
you literally have to be
That's not
perfectly
easy for people
unshakable.
to do, because some people in that moment they get so emotional, blah, 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 and then they don't know how to come down. You stay. So you can't even train somebody to be like that. You either have it or you don't have it. One can get better, but you can't just train someone and say, why can't you do what O'Keefe does? It's not a skill set they can teach anybody. So hopefully to go to that direction, because I think your job is a very important job. To move on, is there anything else you want to tell the audience before we move on from this story? Because obviously we're going to put the link below to go watch the documentary.
Yeah.
But
I
is
mean,
there any final thoughts on this
there's,
story?
Couple things. Number one, you can watch the movie O'KeefeMediaGroup.com. It's $9. People say, why are you charging for journalism? Well, most of the journalism I don't charge for, but I think this movie is incredibly cinematic. I know you watched it yesterday. It's an incredible experience, and it's a really story about human nature. This is about human nature. How do I build an organization? It's not really a business. I mean, it is a business, but it's a mission. How do you create a sustainable entity, a team of people, going after the most powerful people in the world, which I will continue to do. We're about to talk about Epstein and all these other things I'm doing right now. How do you build that?
Dude, I have no idea.
Getting corrupted, without people lying about you to the FBI to protect their families, right? These are really hard questions that I haven't yet fully figured out yet. I'm learning. I'm experimenting. Nobody does this. So I'm trying to create a sustainable organization that can do it at scale.
Oh,
And to be
man.
fired from the company that I created and to build something from nothing. You mentioned in the film, George Kickle says, you can't afford my house. That statement said so much about him, didn't it? Anybody who says that, you can't afford my house, I don't know if you
Oh
can
my,
play
it's
that.
about
all
his
the way
money
up
and
to
This
ego.
is the thing that actually struck people.
Yeah,
the
he
most.
has
Of all
some-
the
oh
things
my
in the
God, bro.
film,
He needs really good
it's the
board
very
members.
last, thing that happens in the movie.
That's super rare
this
people, though, that can
really
sit there and do
struck
that, though.
And it says so much about the character of these people. It's about like
Yeah, they're
30 or-
literally standing. That's
There
right
it
there,
is.
right there.
Played it. Line. We're loyal to each other. George, were you an investor in the same company as Matt Tierman?
Some of them,
You didn't disclose that.
but I wasn't an investor in the companies while I was on your board.
While you're on the board?
Yes, I think I was on the board then.
You weren't.
No,
When did you become an investor? in the
after I
company?
left your board.
Is that right?
How much did you invest in each of Matt's
Yeah, after you
companies?
left.
Watch this.
After it wasn't illegal.
Business.
I think it is. How much did
We
you?
have a disagreement.
Are you refusing to answer the question?
Yes.
I want to talk about your investments. In
I want to
medical
talk
companies.
about you.
Are you
How
gonna-
much
are you
money
gonna-
did
are you
you
gonna
spend?
tell-
How
are you
much
gonna
money
tell-
did you spend on private helicopters?
Now he's deflecting, you know?
particularly concerned about the financial stuff. There is no reason for me to disclose anything. My personal investments?
Yes.
That's ridiculous.
Well,
When
said
you work
you're
for a
businessman.
yes, you do.
Why
When you're on
would
the
you
board
be
of a
buyer? What did you
501c.
mean by that? What did you mean
I
by that?
invest in businesses. That's not news.
It's about making
That's
money.
how I made. Yes.
It's all about making
I
money,
think-
isn't it?
How do you think I paid for this?
Is it all about money?
Too bad you can't afford that.
There it is, right there.
Because you're a cheat.
So
You're a liar.
all right.
Yeah, well, it's all about money, isn't it? It's all about money. Because I'm not a business guy. It's all about money, isn't it?
This was one of my
about
closest associates. It was almost like an uncle to me. And unfortunately, Pat, I think I would say the last comment is, I don't know whether the commercial imperative the profit-making mechanism is compatible with absolute truth-telling. When I watched the people closest to, I mean, this guy was an uncular figure. His wife was like my second mother. And money just, unfortunately, tends
There's
to
no incentive to tell the
so
truth.
it's a deeper, more philosophical concept. I just wanted to get that out and tell you that I'm working on it. And I think the solution is to find really strong people with really strong convictions who are not for sale and unbreakable. And if I can surround myself with those types of people, I think we'll be okay.
That's a perfect transition into the one video clip, Rob, if you can.
Dude, I don't
about
know.
your life, right? We've all seen this clip.
I don't
Kenny, you
think
love this
so.
clip.
I think people are way too
Rob,
corruptible
is there
and
music
flawed.
in this one? I think there is, right?
I believe there is.
Is it going to be okay to play it with the music?
long as we comment.
Okay,
Yeah.
go for
It's
it.
on YouTube Shorts without music too, whichever your preference is. This will work too.
What is the message of it, Rob?
If the price isn't your life,
then you're for sale.
Yep.
Let me see if I can find it on YouTube without the music. See if you
It's
can
YouTube
find
Shorts is without music.
I mean, the music adds
it adds something to it.
You feel like you want to cry.
Yeah. There it is.
Is that the one?
That's it without music.
Okay,
There it
go
is.
for it, Rob.
Price. Is it 10
Go
million?
back to the beginning because you clipped
Is it
out the
20
first
million?
few seconds.
What is your price?
There you go.
Is it 10 million? Is it 20 million? Is it 100 million? What is your price? Because if your price is not your life, then you are for sale. If your price is not your life, then you are for sale. So, if you're
Dude,
going
it's
to be
true.
a truth teller, your price has to be your life. I can't surround myself with people whose price is not their life, because the enemy, whatever the enemy is, whether it be physical, legal, spiritual, will attack the vulnerability of the person who can be compromised. So you get real
Jesus,
spiritual
dude.
real fast if you're going to do this type of work. What is your price?
James, and I've seen this multiple times. I've shared it with people. We played it on the podcast. I think what you're doing, you're hands down the best journalist. You don't give a shit. You even said right now that you're not in the like. What money are you making from exposing the truth? I know it's going to be damn near impossible to trust every single person because what you said about the money situation. But in regard to this video, James, with the price being your life, has anybody, I'm pretty sure they have, approached you of any people of power that have tried to offer? Maybe a Soros, maybe somebody to tell you like, James, shut up, here's money, we'll give you this, disappear, leave
Yeah,
us alone.
It's a very interesting. Yeah, this one, and I remember, Vin, you DM'd me. I appreciate that very
Yep.
much. You were very touched by this.
Yeah, big time.
At the time, people were, you could hear the murmurs in the crowd. These are men twice my age.
Yes.
Just a simple statement. They're like, whoa.
Yeah.
What a concept. Whoa.
Yeah.
This is not, these are, there have been a couple times in meetings where people have, the closest thing I could say whereas a person of wealth would ask me to do something. And I would say, I can't, this is not an exchange of goods and services. I can't do something in exchange for you paying me to do it. That's not how I work as a journalist. I have to operate impartially without fear. And when the person realized where I was coming from, they kind of backed off. They're like, oh, no, that's okay. I almost feel like they're concerned that I'm going to like record them trying to bribe me, which I would.
Of course, that's what you are.
So when they realized, when they danced on that precipice, and they realized where I was
Well,
coming
'cause he
from,
would.
I think they realized, oh, Keith could expose me, and to their credit, they back off. And there's that interesting dance where they're in their minds trying to corrupt me, but they then realize I could expose them. Yeah. So there's been that. Yeah.
So you hear a message like that with life, and your life's on the line, and some of the stories you pursue. Now, here's the thing: politically, James, what would you say you are politically?
I don't even know anymore. I say the truth. I did a story on Pam Bondi.
That's exactly what I'm
and
going with this, yeah.
I took a hit. I think I tell stories by way of example because I think it's better than abstractions. I did a story on the Attorney General of the United States, and it was hard for me because I don't dislike her or like her. It's not about whether I like someone or dislike them. It's about whether the public has a right to know the information I'm exposing. I tend to have been branded as a conservative only because I felt the legacy media in the last decade and 2 decades has been not telling the truth. And if you do tell the truth, then you're branded as a right-winger. But I don't even know what these terms mean anymore. I really don't know what it means to be a liberal or conservative anymore. Do you? I don't understand.
I think conservative values are pretty clear. I think liberal values are not today. They're confused. But conservative values, family, country, America first, making sure we're not going for nonsense wars where people's kids are fighting a war that's unnecessary because somebody's making money on the back end and deals are getting done. Faith, freedom of speech, those are conservative values, right? That I would say they're there. And watching you, I would say you have
constitutionalists.
Okay,
I'm a very strong First Amendment, perhaps one could say absolutist on the First Amendment, with some exceptions. So I would say I believe in, for example, one of my values and virtues is I believe in equal justice before the law. I think the law should. I know that it's impossible, but we should try to emulate this. The law.
You should always try to strive for it.
Some would say that's a conservative value, right? That's an American.
I'd love to see the counter argument for that one.
And I also believe in the freedom of speech, and I'm an absolutist when it comes to that.
Yeah, and where I'm going with this is so video comes out because a lot of conservatives were told on day one, week one. We're going to find out about Epstein, 9/11, MLK, John F. Kennedy. We're going to find all that stuff out. And we've been wanting it for a while to see what's going on with this, who's behind it, especially the last few years at a whole different level. And we're going to find out who the assassination attempt was. Was he tied to anybody? Was Thomas tied to anybody? And then we all see the same clip that you've seen, right? It's the clip with Bongino and Kash Patel.
Yes.
If you can pull that clip up, Rob. And, these are two men that almost anybody who knows, I think that's the one right there. Almost anybody that knows them would call them patriots, right?
Yeah.
They've served their country. They've given their lives to the country. Dan has at the highest level, so has Kash Patel. And then we see this clip here that throws a lot of people off. Go for it, Rob.
Said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to get, I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
I know it's hard work. You said...
And you saw people that have done body language. Dan looks uncomfortable saying what he's saying. The way he answered it, you can tell they've role played that, and now this is purely what people are speculating, right? And then you have this one clip with Pam Bondi.
Correct.
Rob, if you have the Pam Bondi one,
I'd like to play
so
that.
Maybe walk us through what's going on here before we.
And I don't know if you want me to narrate live as opposed to watching me on the screen.
What's better to do?
Perhaps we go to the beginning of where you see Pam Bondi on the hidden camera. So I'll just talk live what I said on the camera. Okay, so there she is at the White House. Go back to the beginning of that clip of her the White House. So that was a tough one for me to publish because you asked if I'm political, and I think I'm. You have to decide who you want to be. Are you a political operative or are you a journalist? And to be a journalist, it's hard because you have to do things like this. Pam Bondi was caught in a restaurant telling a stranger, a nanny, on April 28th or so, that there are tens of thousands of videos involving little children. Now, I didn't target her. I didn't seek to get this. People send me stuff. Sometimes I have undercover people all over the country, and they happen to get a conversation in an airport. I get sent this. I'm like, holy shit. Mm-hmm. This is not public. The Attorney General of the United States, and by the way, Kash, I believe the FBI reports to her, so this is the top dog, is saying to a nanny in a restaurant something that no one knows. And to me, I'm like, well, that's an interesting story, is it not? So I do what I have to do. I reach out to the Attorney General's office for comment. I say, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, was caught in a restaurant saying, and I actually wonder whether I should have done that. I probably did him a favor by giving them the exact quotes. And then a few days later, she says the exact same thing publicly that I emailed the Attorney General's office for comment saying, and played the clip of her at the White House. This is what she said.
Of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn.
Now, this is the first time an official has publicly acknowledged that videos of Epstein and his victims exist. What you may not know is just 9 days prior, the Attorney General had a very similar conversation with a total stranger in a restaurant.
Do you know when the Epstein files are going to get released?
We hope soon. FBI's been.
Okay.
So.
Any dates?
No, you know what it is? There are tons and thousands of videos.
Yeah.
And it's all with little kids. So they have to go through every one.
Pause. So it's interesting because she said it privately in a restaurant to
publicly
in a restaurant, not privately. And to me, it's like that's something. So I felt like I had to publish this. Now, if she hadn't have gone publicly and said this, and I had released this clip in the restaurant, it would have been a much bigger deal. But it does raise questions, doesn't it? Why is this? Why are they not being transparent with the American people? Why are they telling a nanny in a restaurant? So it raises questions to your point about Cash. I know Cash a little bit. I think he is a good man. And I mean that. Based upon what I know about him. I don't know Dan as much, but I also think he's a good man. I don't trust the bureaucracy that
It's the
reports
people
to
around them, yeah.
And if you put any good man and the most ethical person at the top of that bureaucracy, I think you're setting them up for failure. Let me give you a specific example of where I'm coming from. I was raided by the FBI shortly before I met you. The FBI pointed guns at me and took my reporter's notebooks. They just recently closed the case against me a few months ago, the FBI, in February of this year. And they gave me back my phones that they had for 3.5 years. When you get a search warrant to conduct a raid, you have to go to a judge, right, with a reason. Oh, we have this probable cause, the reasons why to raid. When you close a case, which is very rare for the FBI to execute a search warrant and not bring charges, it hardly ever happens, you are required by law to give a copy of the probable cause. That is the reason why you conducted the raid. Guess what they did? They redacted every single word of the probable cause used to raid my newsroom. Every word. Maybe your producer can pull it up on Google or something. Every
The FBI
word
doesn't
is
raid
a
unless
black
they
bar,
intend to
Pat.
charge.
Through. It's ridiculous. It's literally black bars. We're not talking about terrorists. We're not talking about Jeff Epstein. We're not talking about child molesters and drug traffickers. We're talking about James O'Keefe, the journalist. So if our FBI, our Attorney General,
dude,
can't be transparent about why they raided a journalist's newsroom, why do we have any faith in the FBI?
Dude, there's so many fucking data points here. Where's the other YouTube video? What is his name? Oh, Mike Benz. I get to watch another Mike Benz 2 hours. Oh, hell yeah. What a good... I like that guy. What video is it? What is his name? Fuck. God dang it. Turning 9/11 firefighter. Did I give you enough data, Gronk? No, why is it everything but him? Come on, Gronk, you can find it. There it is. Kurt Weldon. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so Kurt Weldon. Congressman Kurt Weldon.
Cell of Al Qaeda in the world.
Okay, so what we're going to do is go to show transcript, and I'm going to Control F, raid. I actually do FBI, even though it's only 3 letters.
Becoming, tell me if I'm getting this wrong, chairman of the Armed Services Committee, the FBI raids your daughter's house, and you lose an election in which your opponent has funding from all over the United States. No one's ever heard of this.
Oh my god, there's such a pattern here. People don't fucking realize it. Oh my god.
Election, it's an even year, of course, and you're from your district in Pennsylvania after 20 years, and out of nowhere, the FBI raids your daughter's house, and we're all told it's because she's corrupt, you're corrupt, et cetera, and then you lose, and we kind of lose track of you, and Washington goes on as it does, and no one talks about 9/11 again. I think that's fair to say. I mean, I was there. I remember when all this happened, though. I
covered it all.
I didn't put it together in my head at all until about a year ago. I was thinking about this in the shower. Whatever happened to Kurt Weldon and his daughter? So I go on the internet, I'm like,
And they raided his office. He had been working, I haven't talked about in the past, Tucker. The same time they raided my daughter's house, they raided a lawyer in my district who's a Democrat, who, interestingly enough, they shut down his Philadelphia office. They brought dogs and helicopters and all to downtown Philly, same time. At the time they raided his office, he had been working for FBI counterintelligence against Russia for 2 years that I had arranged 2 years earlier. I had arranged 2 years earlier, under oath. So the counterintel people handling him went to his office and were sitting with him while these agents from D.C. come in, and you had 2 sets of agents in the same office at the same time. And the counterintel people are saying, don't answer any questions. We don't know what this is, but you're doing work for our country. And the other ones don't know why they're sent there. Their first question is, Mr. Gallagher, isn't it true that you're related to Congressman Kurt Weldon? And John starts laughing at them because Congressman Weldon's wife's last name is the same name as mine, and you're from the FBI? I know who told them that, Tucker.
Wait, so what was the pretext for raiding your daughter's house?
There was none. They never talked to her.
So what was she charged with? What did she go
They
to?
never charged her. They never charged her with anything. They never talked to her. There was no charge.
So the FBI just shows up.
Shows up, raids, takes boxes out, and then gives her the boxes back unopened, still taped. Nothing. Nothing.
When did they?
Oh my god. Was it Sean Ryan? Sean Ryan show.
Hey everybody, my next guest is no stranger to the Sean Ryan Show. In fact, his first appearance was earlier this year. Maybe you remember the Dallas Alexander episode.
These are the only ones I know off the top of my head, too. Holy shit. Oh, no.
Got a cease and desist from the Canadian
Where's the
government.
transcript? Oh.
This actually wound up having to do with free speech,
Um,
and the
raid.
SRS team stood up against Canada.
They don't use the word raid?
Canadian free speech. Well,
FBI.
This man is the guy that made that all.
You want him to call the FBI director. You want to tell him to tell them, hey, we've received these credible reports. I would like you to send out FBI agents and research them. Figure it out. Prove it conclusively, one way or the other. The FBI. And that is really where this thing comes down to, is that he received these reports from the Giuliani team and others, the president. I think Rudy Giuliani is full of crap. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send out a team of FBI agents. We're going to go investigate all that stuff that he did, and I'm going to bring you back a report showing you that he's full of crap. If he had done that, I think that would have changed a lot of the investigations. To conduct an investigation is very dangerous because you have no control over it. If I ask the police or the FBI, I want you to investigate this, my hands are off of it, and I am in a position of sitting back and waiting And the FBI is going to go out, they're going to investigate, they're going to interview people, they're going to look at evidence, and there's a chance they come back and they say, Tim, this thing that you said, we found evidence of it. But there's also a big chance that they come back and they say, hey, this thing that you said, we found an innocent explanation. There's no there. He never asked in any of these things, I want you to investigate with this conclusion. I want you to investigate this allegation. That's the difference. And so, and this, crosses both the Georgia and D.C. case. If you believe that there's a possibility of fraud and you're asking them to investigate it, that is not a crime.
You give the boxes back
That was months later.
after you'd lost.
Yeah, and not only that, 3 months after the election, the annual fire dinner in Washington, which I started, 2,000 people attend, members of Congress, House and Senate. George Bush, the father, former CIA director, does a tribute to me, which I sent it to your staffer. You can play it. And he says in the tribute, Congressman Weldon, you're the kind of leader that America needs. You're the kind of leader that leaves the country safer, stronger. Those aren't my words. Those are George Bush Sr.'s words to 2,000 people after they raided my daughter's house.
After you'd already been neutralized.
After I'd
and
been
you were not going to be.
It was
chairman
all
of the
about
House
getting me out.
So did you? So the raid comes. You must be completely confused. Do you call your daughter and say like, "What's going on?"
She was totally devastated. Ruined her life. How do you deal with that?
I don't know.
How do you deal with your kid?
I'm probably going to find out at some point.
If you want to come after me, and that's what I say to them. They're scumbags.
Oh, I know.
You scumbag! If you want to come after me publicly. But if you're going to hide and go do something behind somebody, which you do, now there are good people in the agency, but there are scumbags that work in our agencies, and I know them, and they're making money. They're $1 million people, and their $1 million companies are going to be exposed if it's the last thing I do. And you'll see the ties around the world to the $1 million intel people who've made money off the backs of young American kids who have died in wars while they make money, or their companies make money. And I'll give you example after example of that. In Russia, in Ukraine, around the world, in Libya. That's what's wrong. And until we understand that, it's not going to stop. And Donald Trump's people need to understand that. We're not playing tiddlywinks out in the schoolyard. We're playing with bad people.
I agree. Yeah, as I've said, I've seen it up close, so I know that you're telling the truth.
What they do to my family is outrageous.
So this happens, and in the final month of a campaign, with
3 weeks,
with this challenger who doesn't live in your district, who all of a sudden has, I think I'm remembering this correctly, a lot of his money came from California.
All of it. And then we find out, Tucker, and I'll give it to you. We get a memo. My staff does some digging. What's going on? And we find a memo that was sent to my staff in September, a month before this, from the National Republican Congressional Committee to my campaign committee saying, hey, for some reason, your opponent just cut his TV buy for 1 week in October by $500,000. The week was the week they raided my daughter's house.
Because you wouldn't need it.
So they told the Democrats the week they were going to raid my daughter's house.
I believe it.
Because they didn't need the advertising that week.
But what's crazy, if you think about it, and by the way, I should say of Sestak, who I always thought was just such a reptile, but he had kind of like the perfect views. He was very liberal socially, but on foreign policy questions, he was just national security state.
He's a loser.
Perfect national security state.
He's an embarrassment, and I'll say it publicly.
Of Sestak, who I always thought was just such a reptile, but he had kind of like the perfect views. He was very liberal. Of Sestak, who I always thought was just such a reptile, but he had kind of like the perfect views. He was very liberal socially, but on foreign policy questions, he was just national security state.
He's a loser.
Perfect national security state.
He's an embarrassment, and I'll say it publicly. He's an embarrassment.
Oh, I couldn't.
And what he did to my family, I'll never forget.
So, but that's the Bush Justice Department.
Absolutely.
That's the Bush FBI.
It's the and I wrote a letter to Mueller, which I'll give you a copy.
Mueller was FBI director then?
Yes, I wrote a personal memo to him on LinkedIn, right to his personal self. And I said, Mr. Mueller, I respect you personally for being a Marine, but you're a scumbag for what you did to my family.
So did you call over to the White House and say, like, what the hell is going on?
I called Karl Rove. He said, get a good lawyer.
That's
And I have no respect for Karl Rove.
Well, no one does.
And I'll tell you that story on another show.
Wait, so but your daughter's house gets raided. She doesn't get charged with anything. The FBI
Nothing,
never
never-
even
not-
comes.
Oh, okay. Well, there's like 5 instances of the FBI raiding somebody politically and never charging them with anything. And now we have another one with James O'Keefe.
Parent about these other issues. That's where I'm coming from.
And is this,
We have
is this,
so-
is
we're
this
so
in regard
fucked.
to the Ashley Biden diary, James?
Correct.
This is it, right? Because you exposed, because somebody contacted you and told them that they found the diary of the daughter of the President of the United States saying a bunch of stuff and also claiming that her father showered with her probably at inappropriate ages, and then they raid your house.
Correct. Yeah, it's an affidavit. It's my go down. It's Project Veritas journalist detained devices seized. This is not it, but it's on my X page. There's on page 47 of the affidavit. Every word is redacted. I mean, I was enraged. The American Civil Liberties Union, which is a liberal group, came to my defense. This is crazy. You take if another country like Ukraine or Russia or North Korea did this, our State Department would. So my point is, I don't have a lot of faith in these institutions. I just don't.
What do you think happens when they get in? That's what I want to know. Because to me,
There it is, right there. I apologize. I apologize. Could you just? I apologize. Interrupt.
Is that real?
That's a real document. Can you zoom in, please?
Like what?
It says probable cause justifying search of O'Keefe's person and premises. Every single word is redacted. They even redacted the footnote.
So
isn't this insane? There's more of this.
So it
but
means they can do whatever they want. They don't have to show you why they came in your house.
It's literally
Look
it's
at
a
that. Look
it's
at
a
that.
violation. Look at this. Look at this.
the whole thing. Keep going, Rob.
Like, okay, all right, see what they
Keep
did
going.
there.
Okay, wait. There's something unredacted. Read
Yeah,
the bottom.
What's the bottom?
Read
What's the
that. Based upon my this is an FBI agent. I have learned, among other things, that cell phones are capable of sending emails.
Great.
Are you kidding me?
I'm shocked they didn't redact that.
This is not Saturday Night Live. And then it goes on to the rest of the affidavit. But the previous 3 pages are the probable cause. That is the justification for the raid against James O'Keefe.
And James, if you don't mind, what were they looking for? The diary?
They weren't looking for the diary. They already
had it.
already had that. What were they? Well, that's a loaded question. What
Yeah.
were they really trying to do?
What were they really trying to do?
They were really trying to get inside my cell phone because people in the government come to me with information which, as a reporter, I have a right to receive, and they don't like that.
Of course.
Now, if you think about
Did you give them the password to your
okay,
cell phone?
this is another very interesting
Because
story.
you know what happened with Ron Johnson, where when they walked up to his house and they took his phone, and the rule of thumb, if you ever hand your phone over, you're
Okay.
not supposed to give the password. How did they get into your phone?
This is a crazy story. They bang on the door, and it's the loudest pounding. You know it's the feds. You just know. And I go to the door. I'm like, I'm opening the door because they're going to shoot me. And then they open. They put me in handcuffs. I think I'm under arrest. They say, no, this is a search warrant.
I don't know enough
I say,
about
"I
the
wanna speak to my
affidavit
lawyer."
process.
I say over and over again, I want to speak to my lawyer because I learned I was arrested 10 years prior. Don't talk to the FBI. Just don't, even if you're innocent. They say, would you like to use the iPhone on your nightstand? I said, yes. And then I unlock the phone
Get
because I
outta
have to call my lawyer.
Get out
And the moment that I unlock my phone, they snatch the
Get
phone.
outta here.
Not get out of here.
Holy shit.
They snatched the phone out of my hand because I unlocked the phone, and then the FBI agent, almost to torture me in front of me, he goes to the settings and he changes the settings to make it
No password.
not go to sleep.
Wow.
God,
And then
bro.
they put the phone in an evidence bag. Now the FBI has access to all of my signal messages. Do you know what's in my signal messages? All the people in the government that come to me with information.
Wow.
So the Department of Justice, this is the Biden Department, or a month before Trump was elected in 2020. Excuse me, Biden was elected in 2020. Now they have access to all of my sources.
Jeez.
So this is what's considered to be a constitutional raping, because the American Bill of Rights have special protections for reporters, and you're talking to the only newsroom that has ever been raided by the FBI. We're the only ones that have ever been raided, and they did it just to get the information. So what's behind all those black bars? I believe confidential FBI informants.
Of course.
People who lied to the FBI to set me up. So I could tell you so many war stories, guys, but you asked me questions.
In order
about
to get a
Cash
warrant,
and
you
Dan
have to
Bongino.
have
They're great
probable
guys. I
cause,
think
and
they
people
mean
have
well.
to give them the
But
probable
if you
cause.
put me in charge of the FBI, I wouldn't know what to do. I mean, how do you trust a bureaucracy like that? Where people behave. That, by the way, that is totally illegal. You can't take a gun, point it against your forehead, and say, "Give me your reporter's notebooks." If that happened in Eastern Europe, our State Department would be issuing sanctions against that country. But it happened in New York.
Yeah, so guys, one question, James. So they promise all this. Day one, we're going to do this. Day one, we're going to do that. What do you think happened? Meaning they're in now. Donald Trump is the president. He's told them, go ahead, you guys do whatever you want. Who makes a Pam Bondi, a Dan Bongino, a Kash Patel all of a sudden change their tunes and not release what we know? Because, James, at the end of the day, she even said tens of thousands, I'm assuming, James, is, let's say, 30,000 hours of grown men having sex with children. And, James, I don't know if you're familiar. In the movie JFK, Jim Garrison says, and I quote, "Let justice be done though the heavens fall," which basically means going after truth no matter how powerful the people and no matter what happens to the system. So what happened? What do you think they go in, and who tells them you are not releasing any of this because our friends and blah, blah, blah are attached to it?
I don't know if anyone tells them. I mean, some have said they put you in a skiff. This is more of a, this is not a fact. This is speculation, but a funny notion that might illustrate what could happen is, you know, that image
I've
of
been
JFK
in a skiff, by the
getting
way.
shot?
Yes.
Do they put the leaders in a skiff that's a secure, compartmentalized information facility?
Yep.
Do they show the Zapruder film of JFK getting shot and said, "You better do what we tell you to do"? Or that could be you. Now, I'm not saying they did that to these gentlemen, and I actually genuinely mean this. I've met Cash. I think he's a genuinely good man. I just don't. I think the system is institutionally corrupt. And everyone says, you know what they say to me, Pat? "Oh, call Cash. He'll help you out." Call
People
Bam.
are corrupt,
Call
so
Bam.
that
Here,
institution
like I
would
got
be
'em on speed
corrupt
dial.
too.
They're getting asked for 10,000 favors a day. I don't have any money to give them. The system is so broken when you need the guy at the top to be so influential. It's the system. It's the Article 3 judges.
It's
the
everybody
courts, it's the
around
line
them, yeah.
prosecutors, the agents in my apartment. Do you know that when the agents were in my apartment, I could tell by the looks on their faces that they didn't want to be there. They're like, this is crazy. This is wrong. But they did it.
Well,
You know,
speculate a little bit. What do you think happens when they get in? Because they tend to change when they get in.
Are you talking about the FBI agents?
Anybody and everybody. The moment they get in, and the whole quote by Mario Cuomo, people campaign in poetry, but they govern in prose. You know, once they go in, you know, they used to communicate and talk to you. Now the only way they talk to you is with emojis. You know, hey, when they were campaigning, they wanted to talk to you regularly. I want to come on the podcast. I want to do this. I want to do that. And then all of a sudden they're in. They're more quiet about. But
Good
what
question.
do you think happens
The
when they get in?
Politics. I'm working on a story right now. One of the directors of the agency, they mean well. They go into FEMA, or they go on the IRS. They have all these notions of freedom and prosperity and eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. But then they get in there, and there's such snakes in these entities. Just
It's everybody that works in their own best
phonies and
interest.
narcissists. They're not attracted to do the right thing. They want power and money and sex. Are we under some delusion that the people in Washington want something other than power and money and sex? What percentage of the people in Washington inside these agencies are actually there to do the right thing? What percentage? For real? Are we naive and foolish enough to think that people are in these places?
I think they start off wanting to do the right thing, and then through peer pressure, they get forced.
Or
to
there's
filter
a
out their
few
statesman
people,
in 'em.
or there's a few people that are there who do the right thing, but there's so many snakes and manipulative. Look at what happened to me. Look why I'm on your show. I started my own institution because I didn't want to be part of the snakes, and the snakes infiltrate. And I think in some regards it's human nature. And this is a really good question you're asking. I'm learning in real time. I started an institution because I didn't trust institutions, and then I'm removed from my own institution by snakes.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm James O'Keefe. Been doing this journalism thing for about 20 years. Truth, justice, exposing corruption, everything that comes along with it. If you want to connect with me, talk to me about any of this, you can connect with me through Minect. You can see the QR code below. Look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, but what I want to know is, you have a creative mind.
Okay,
so
go
let's say, out of 100 people that get in there, okay, let's say 50 of them are in there because they're driven by power, fame, prestige, narcissist, all that stuff. Okay, let's say 20% get in because they're statesmen, they love America, they just really want to go out there and make a difference. Let's say 30% get in because they think it's a good job, right? It's like, it's a pretty good job. I'm going to go try it out, see what I can do. I'm going to go be a lawyer. Okay. The 50% are the ones that found a place where they can use their evil tendencies and
I understand
and
what you're
do that.
saying.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
But once the 20% gets in,
yep,
the 20% are the ones that are getting in that I'm a statesman. I love America.
80-20
You know,
rule.
it's bigger than this. What do you think happens for the 20%ers to flip?
What I think is, you say 20% statesmen get in there, or something
Let's
like
say
that?
it's 20%. I'm just making up a number.
I think that's accurate.
It's
think that's
80-20.
accurate. I think there are probably 20%. I was probably embellishing. The problem is if you're in an institution, you have leakers, or one or two people.
It doesn't take
top.
very
All
many.
it takes is a
Yep.
couple
That's it.
that are sabotaging your
It
campaign.
only takes a little poison to
that are
make to poison
leaking your
everything else.
confidential informants to the press. It completely sabotages your operation. So the problem in these institutions, if you don't have your team, which is like 100% loyal and high integrity, even a few of these snakes can destroy the entity. So that is the problem in my view, is that you have a couple people at the top who are engaged in gaslighting, destructive campaigns. Maybe Bongino, here's another thing, like they're getting fed information that is not true. And
That
they're put in a
happens.
position, an untenable situation, where it's difficult for them to be successful. That's what I think.
Well, James, here's my question though: if they're from her words, everybody heard it twice, one to a stranger, one in front of a camera on the White House lawn. They have tens of thousands of hours. That's mind-boggling. Of grown men having sex with children. Okay, who has the power, James, to not let them expose those people right now? Because those people are still walking around, pedophiles, sexual assault pedophiles that belong in prison, and to me, I believe they deserve to die. Okay, that's my thing.
I agree.
Who's stopping them, James, from releasing one of the names? We know the whole backstory with Epstein, but you mean to tell me you guys are watching these videos every single day and nobody's been taken off the street?
That's a question that Dan Bongino and Kash Patel need to answer.
Will they?
Need to answer. Will they? Do they have the courage to answer it? Why aren't they answering it? By the way, people expect me to answer that question. I don't have any power. I mean, I'm other than the authority that sources give to me when they give me information. I'll tell you something. I released some videos in the last week inside of Epstein's bedroom in the British Virgin Islands. Excuse me, the American Virgin Islands. I'm releasing images inside of his temple. Some interesting stuff on the chalkboard, by the way. There's a weird picture of a baby in his dining room. Some weird. There's his chalkboard. The FBI had those videos, but you know who released it? O'Keefe Media.
Yep.
So why can't they release the binders? Remember the binders they released?
Yep.
Okay, if they release, why can't they release this stuff? Why am I releasing it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no sex of children in there. That's something you could show the public. That's Epstein's writing by the way, on the chalkboard. Some mysterious and cryptic messages there. I think our
What's
government
it say? Power, deception, music.
Mirror in face, either dank brain or dark brain. These are. The public is deciphering these messages that Jeff
Plants.
Epstein. This is video, by the way, if you're wondering what this is days after he was raided, shortly after his arrest there in 2019, 2020. And that's the penmanship to show that it was in fact Jeff Epstein's writing on the chalkboard. So we released this video, and my point is, someone inside the United States government provided that to me.
Someone inside the United States government gave that to you.
That's correct.
That you're in communication with.
That's correct.
High ranking or mid level?
I can't say.
Okay. But
I mean, yeah, it doesn't matter what level, but yeah.
Because they knew that the government wasn't going to release it, so let me have it released by an OMG.
They gave it to me because they don't trust the FBI.
And they work for the FBI.
I can't say.
Okay. And some of the stuff that I saw, the statues, the angel statue, right? The girl in the bathroom sitting there
There's
that's
a strange statue
It's
here.
it's
like eyes wide shut, like sort of stuff there with the
an
weird
angel,
There's a
it's a-
woman that doing something to her private parts there.
It's a freaking demonic house, bro.
There is a book regarding Satan in the bookshelf. We got some books there. So yeah, this was provided to me. You're looking at the library, the bedroom of Jeffrey Epstein, and the Little St. James, the Epstein Island. This is inside of his library. No one's ever seen this before. Some people attacking me for publishing this. Oh, we want the names, James. We don't care about his library. But there it is.
It doesn't
Satanic
have the
Verses and
names.
some other books there.
Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie.
Salman Rushdie,
Yeah.
right? That's different. But people were attacking me because they want the names, and my philosophy is that if I continue to publish all these things, sources will continue to come out.
Okay, so let me ask this question to go to the next level. Your method on how you get it, right? Your method on how you guys gather intel. It seems to be a pattern that a lot of these, like, it's almost like if I was to audit you to see what your game plan is, you tend to target people that work in the office that are gay, that, let me just say it and then just flush mine out and call me out and say, no, I disagree. So through Grindr, dating sites, you'll go in, step number one, let's identify anybody on this administration that is gay. All right, great. Step number two, go on Grindr and see if you see their profile that matches this. Great. Let's make 20 different profiles and let's see if one of the ones he'll fall for. Great. 4, schedule a date to go out and put the camera and the recording on you and nonchalant ask, what do you do, and act like you don't know what they do and you don't have a clue who they are and act dumb. And then step number 6, let's have a couple drinks, loosen them up, make them feel like you're ready to go home and have some fun with them. Step number 7, say, let's follow up. I have to go home. I'm so sorry. And then number 8, release the information. Is that pretty spot on the system and the approach you guys take, or am I missing a few steps?
You might be missing a few, but I think that's not 100% what we do. That might be like 30% of that's one technique to get information. Yes.
Okay, so if that's the case, how come? Have you had any, or have you tried? Maybe the better question is to say, I am sure you've tried to get Fauci. I'm sure you've tried to get his people. I am sure you've tried to, see how you can find him, to get him in a place to open up and talk. The question would be, 1, have you? 2, why have you not been that successful with Fauci?
Specifically Anthony Fauci.
I am specifically talking about Anthony Fauci.
The man, not his staff, for example.
Well, anybody that's his lieutenants, that would be his staff as well. That's still a very valuable asset because
it's a
what
good
you did with Pfizer was very powerful. Why haven't you been successful with Fauci?
I don't have a legitimate excuse there. I suppose I like to say this to my staff that, and I hate to refer to myself in the third person, but O'Keefe Media, my organization, we always get the story. Sometimes it just might take longer for us to get it. So I would say we haven't gotten him yet. Have I made the attempts? I mean, we did so many stories about Pfizer specifically, but to your point, why haven't we gone after this man in particular? Oh, I remember about 2-3 years ago, I did everything I'm talking about is legal, but I did a lot of surveillance on him for a number of days and moved on to the next story. So I suppose I don't really have a good excuse there, and that's something that I should get him to open up about.
I don't know if I told you last time we were together, there was a story of an insurance guy who had a couple prostitutes on his payroll, and this guy sells big insurance policies, something called premium financing. And one day, one of his competitors steals give or take a $5 million insurance policy away from him. And he finds out that he stole that $5 million insurance policy and coerced the client to go with him instead of the other guy. Anyways, this guy's step number 1. Someone's computer keeps going off. Can you lower the audio? Yeah. So he sends first a private investigator to see patterns. For about a month, they measure his patterns. What restaurants he goes to, at what time, where he sits, what he orders, who's his waiter, who's his waitress. A month later, after doing a private investigation and seeing his patterns, he sends the girl. The girl goes, sits at the bar. She knows where he's going to be at what time. And right next to him, she gets emotional and she smiles at him. He starts talking and say, what's going on? Is everything okay with you? I'm so sorry. I'm just really going through a really hard time. She starts crying. She opens up to him. She says, I'm so embarrassed crying here. He follows her, goes upstairs to a room. Boom, they have the recording, the footage. He sends the footage to the other agent, says, hey, this is what you did. You need to send that client back over to me. Do you go as far as that to measure patterns of an individual to see what restaurants and places to go to be able to track it? Or,
I mean, that's
is that
general
one of the
surveillance.
That's an extreme example, but we have done things like that. There is something that we're working on right now where we were tracking down corruption in D.C., which you'll see in a month or so, which is serious story. And we had to find a specific individual or a specific organization. So you can't do a dating app thing. You got to do it a different way. You might pretend to, and we don't do exactly what you just said, but you might create an alias. Let's say you're a headhunter, or you're hiring. So you whatever a person needs, someone needs something. Undercover work is about identifying what that need is and providing that thing to them so that you can get access to them. Undercover work is all about access.
Oh, shit.
How do you get access to someone? The easiest way is a dating app, because everyone needs love and affection and so forth and so on, or they believe the person they're meeting with could be a possible future partner. That's the easiest and most expedient way. But you make a really good point about Anthony Fauci, and frankly, I don't have a good excuse, and I usually don't do this on live television, but maybe I should send a team to get him to open up. It's a good idea. I don't think me saying this will stop him. That's the other thing. These people are so arrogant that people often say, how do these people keep talking to you like this? And the truth is because I'm not a psychologist, but for lack of a better word, they're all narcissists.
They think they're untouchable.
That's right. And they don't even look at us. It's almost like they're confessing. They just don't even think. It's impossible for them to think they could be held accountable for what they're saying. And we have a whole bunch of what we call swipers. We call them the American swipers. And these are girls, some guys. I do this sometimes, and I go on these lunch meetings, dinner meetings, and they just spill the beans. A lot of guys in the deep state in Washington that work for these organizations, the Pentagon, Department of Defense, and they're talking about they're resisting Donald Trump from the inside. Don't tell anybody I'm doing this. And they'll always say it within the first 15 minutes. And some of them have security clearances.
Yeah, that's the part where when you're putting a team together, you have to measure their level of ambition to be cool, right? To kind of say, let me tell you what I know. Wink, wink. Let's keep it between us. I'm cool. It goes back to Jonah Mendes, the chief disguise officer I had on the podcast. I interviewed her right in front of the White House. And I said, what's a good quality of being a CIA agent? I said, is it charming? Is it great in sales? Is it being a great persuader? Is it being this? Is it being that? He says, it's all of that and then some. However, there's one quality we look for. What's that? If you just got the information that you're watching TV, you just saved the free world, you don't need to brag about it to anybody else.
Wow. Yeah.
That's the quality of a good CIA agent. What a freaking perspective. So for me, if you're bringing guys in, like you almost have to size them up to see how much are you trying to be cool. Like, for example, Scott Bessent gives me a lot of good vibes of a guy that could give a shit about being cool. Makes sense, because this guy worked on The Roof for 15 years, almost 14 years. First term was, I think, 9 years under Soros. Then 5 years as his chief investment officer, if I'm not mistaken. Prior to him going up there, the average person didn't know who he was. They kind of knew, but they didn't know who he was. It was like, whoa, who is this guy, right? And then he goes in, but some of the guys that get in there, they're really, really ambitious with fame. And fame tends to get a hold of you and corrupt you in ways, because behind closed doors, you want to be sitting in a room saying, let me tell you what I know. That's very hard to find people like that on the inside. Very hard to, have people around you that know information on what things you guys are working on, and they want to brag to nobody. When I was running my insurance company, we'd always have big announcements. Like, first time I had Kobe Bryant as a keynote speaker, the late Kobe Bryant. I didn't tell anybody. At that event, I announced him and George Bush as keynote speakers. Until the very end, only 2 people know that those 2 were the keynote speakers. I didn't tell anybody. And when we announced, my own wife didn't know. Nobody knew. When we announced, everyone's like, what? Yes. But I could only tell 2 people.
You didn't tell your wife?
Nobody knew, because it's exciting news. It's not even like for some people, like they want to say it, They can't control the excitement. Oh my God, I can't wait to meet him. Oh my God, I can't wait that he's coming down, right? So for some, it's purely from an innocent excitement standpoint. For some, it's about, let me tell you what I know. Don't tell anybody, right? Dude, that filtering process of getting people like that on your team.
That's almost impossible.
That's almost impossible.
But that is the mission of how to surround yourself with good people.
Ooh, that's a tough thing to do. The only way you can do that is if you've never had a run rate with them, to accelerate the testing, because your character has to be tested. It takes about a couple of years.
How do you do that? I'm just curious your thoughts on how you do that.
You test them. It takes a couple of years. You test them with level 3 information and see if that gets leaked. It's easy. Go ahead and leak that. I don't want you to leak it, but if you do, I now know who you are.
Right.
And then once I do that, I know I can never have you on level 2 type of meetings. I can only have you on level 4 type of meetings. I can't invite you to level 2 type of meetings because you leak information. So that's the part where a little bit here, oh, you can't know. Little bit there, or you cannot. Like you have kids. You know how you're like, let me test to see if this guy can handle some bad news at this age. You give it to him, he panics and has anxiety. Like, I can't give you bad news. But you give this other guy some bad news about what's going on with family, he can handle it. Like, this guy's a gamer. He's not there yet.
He's a
If
gamer?
this guy gets distracted. This guy with bad news, he knows how to keep it to himself, stay strong. Okay, good. I can handle talking high-level conversation with this level of my kid, but not this one.
Like a controlled leak, almost.
It's a controlled leak to test what the individuals know. This is a very difficult thing to do, and I bet at a job with Donald Trump, when you're at that level, all you can do is, James, what do you think about John? James, what do you think about Cash? Let's say you don't have a relationship with him. Let's say you don't have a relationship with some of these guys. What do you think about him? I think he's good. And then you're hoping the person I'm asking is a tier 1 person that can filter out a person that's a tier 4. Do I make this person a tier 2? I don't know if this is making sense. Like, you have to almost like lean on somebody else you trust to filter them out. So the reason why I'm going here is to see, you know, how for somebody to get to the level of the president, where you saw the first term, how many people he hired that turned on him, flipped on him. What did his methodology for phase 2 in 2024 change? How do you think about the team and the people that he's put together?
I think they're a good team. I think they're loyal. That's what I in full disclosure, I hiked with Bobby Kennedy in the Santa Monica Mountains, and I found him to be a brave man. When I say brave, I mean there is no incentive for him to do what he has done. He's a Kennedy. So I agree with Tucker that Bobby Kennedy is probably one of the bravest people to have done what he has done. But I think going back to your point about incentives, in my case, and I speak from personal experience, let me give you a thought experiment. Yeah, I've been arrested by the FBI. I've been raided by the FBI. I've been sued 50 times. I've been through all these things. Haven't been shot yet. And what Trump has gone through is at the highest level. And I find that there is an incentive to betray people like Trump. Look at all the goodies you get if you go to the New York Times, and there's an incentive there. And I find that when you are pinched by the FBI, which I have been, and by the way, totally falsely accused. That doesn't matter if you did it or not. You're an innocent man. Forget that. But when they did this to Michael Flynn's son, or something to the effect of, you better sign this form saying that your boss committed a crime, or you won't see your family for 10 years. How many people would take that deal? In other words, how many people would do the right thing even if they suffered? Now, that's a really terrifying, and you hesitate to answer that question because this is where things get really deep. Because when you're going after the most powerful people in the world, which we are doing, which Trump is doing, you have to find people, not, Pat, who just won't leak information. But if the FBI were to point a gun at you and said, you better sign a form saying that James embezzled money, they say, I will not do that because I fear God, not man. Or whatever, if you're a Christian, you say that. If you're something else, you say something similar. I fear God, not man. I will not bear false witness because it's the wrong thing to do. Well, then you're not going to see your family for 10 years. Okay. You have to find people like that. That's hard. It's hard to find those people. I go back to my original point. The instinct for self-preservation is an extremely important human behavior. And if you're going to do what Donald Trump is doing, or to a certain extent, what Project Veritas was doing, going after Anthony Fauci and these types of people, and Pfizer and BlackRock and the FBI. You have to find people who are completely unbreakable, and that's just what we're.
Oh, it's Spartan. Oh, welcome in Spartan and Raiders. Oh, it's hook time. Wonder if I can read off the phone. Spartan Leonidas is your go-to for cozy gaming vibes. A spirited streamer loves RPGs, coffee, Snorlax naps. Join their hybrid gaming group for chill chats and backseat gaming. From Super Mario RPG to Splatoon, they're all about variety and jocularity. I haven't seen that word in a long time. Welcome in. Hope your Mario got RPG'd. Appreciate it. Welcome in. We're listening to what happened to James O'Keefe, the founder of Veritas. And it's pretty crazy. I don't know if I've heard it, but I've never seen it typed. That's kind of crazy. The truth hit him. I don't know if you know what Veritas is or not. I'm not, like, I think up to this point I was, like, vaguely familiar because I'd seen a couple of them, like, capturing people at a diner saying, like, crazy stuff or something on camera. But because he's been doing it for, like, 20 years, like, before YouTube and stuff. But I hadn't really thought about it until I saw this pop up. And it was part of the my YouTube recommended. And then I realized that he's been going through a bunch of shit, so. No, it looks like he was framed with all that stuff. Yeah, that's why I'm looking. Well, I mean, we're taking his word, I guess, right? But he's in the middle of a lawsuit of getting his company back because they all framed him and removed him as CEO. Made up a bunch of stuff, and they're currently in a criminal proceeding of him trying to get Veritas back. Yeah, that was kind of my thing too, is I thought that he kind of like got corrupt, but it looks like it's the other way around. It looks like everybody around him was corrupt and framed him. Like I'm like 95% believe him. I mean, we're like an hour and 20 minutes in, but yeah, it's crazy. And then he talked about the FBI raiding his house, and then I've gone through other podcasts where FBI have raided other people as well. I still have it sitting here. Like the FBI is clearly used as a political weapon over the last at least 20. I mean, they even have them and the CIA have a actual record history of being corrupt and being weaponized. The CIA went rogue for like fucking 20, 30 years in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I would argue they're still rogue, to be honest. Like, you train these people to subvert and break the law professionally, and you don't think it would get wielded in some way, shape, or form against other people? Like, okay. Yeah. This has been a crazy pod, though.
We're talking about how do you find that very difficult thing to do. And Donald Trump, I'll say one quick story about Donald Trump. I was with him a year ago in his apartment in New York City, and this was like right around the week he was getting indicted for some stupid stuff with the porn star, and he was signing a hat to my father. And I had done a story on the CIA. I exposed a CIA guy on tape who was on one of these dating apps giving away information. I'm resisting Donald Trump. I'm not giving information to the president. And he was and Trump wanted to make a video with me about reacting to this. And I said, how do you deal with it? I said, I'm serious. How do you? And he goes, he's signing this hat to my dad, and he goes, I just don't care. I just don't care. I was like, you don't care? He's like, I don't care. Maybe he doesn't care, but he has been able to develop a way, perhaps, where he just got thick skin, you know? But it's tough. It's really tough to face these attacks. And I can be strong, right? I cannot bear false witness, right? Mm-hmm. I can say, I will not talk to you, screw you. But my people around me have to be really, really strong.
Yeah, it's not everybody's job. You know, it's not everybody's job. And when you go up to that position, you have to also know that your own family's not going to understand the job. your voters are not going to understand the job. There's some decisions you have to make that's going to make 80% of people unhappy. And then you're going to be also in positions where your character is going to be tested. You're hoping that part you don't fall for. Okay, but sometimes you wonder when these guys get in, another reason why they, flip or change or any of that. Who's more valuable to a U.S. government? Somebody that I have information on, that I can control when I give him the job, or somebody I don't have information on? I don't know if you understand the question, what I'm saying.
Said that again so I understand.
Who is more controllable? Somebody I hire that I have information on them, some intel on them that's maybe sensitive, that they wouldn't want to be public.
Right.
Am I better off hiring somebody that I have something like that, or am I better off offering a job to somebody that I have no intel on them?
That's an interesting
I don't
question.
know. And it depends on your style of leadership.
Interesting. And whether you have something, everyone has skeletons in their closet, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something we've done that we're not proud of. Would you
Mhm.
agree with that statement? Maybe not illegal, although maybe you stole something when you were a teenager. But isn't it true that every single one of us has something that we're not?
No one walks on water. Everyone sins in a different way.
We sin. And I said myself included. These board members of my company were trying to leak like intimate messages between me and my girlfriend, which made them look bad because everyone has an intimate life, consensual life in your bad bedroom. But I think your point is interesting. What I would say in response to that is that the motivation, the incentive for people not to have those skeletons leaked is extremely high. People will do anything to avoid being publicly shamed. And this is where this blackmail and this extortion thing comes in. My philosophy, you want to know what I said, go ahead, make my day. Leak it. I don't care. I don't give a shit. Publish everything. And they did. Evidently, they don't have much on me. Because the FBI went through every message in my phone for 5 years, and all they could get was some kinky messages between me and my girlfriend. But I do think that what is your answer? Which of those do you think as an employer you'd focus on between those two?
No, to me, it depends what type of a leader you are.
Depends on what type of leader you are.
It depends on what type of a leader you are. Because I've watched how some of our guys led their guys, and some of my competitors led them. I was in a previous company, and I watched how one guy led one of his guys, who he held him hostage because every month that guy under the table was giving him cash for loans and stuff like that, mortgages, and then all of a sudden, the day it stopped, that guy lost all his licenses. So he liked having information on his guys to hold him hostage. But deep down inside, that relationship is a dark relationship. And you don't have the loyalty. It's kind of like, imagine, Anna Nicole Smith marries that billionaire, whoever the guy was.
90-some years old.
And he was 88 years old, whatever his age was, right? She marries this guy, old as hell. And you think all the money in the world is going to win her love over? No. You just win her sex over. You don't win her love over, right? Whoever this J. Howard Marshall was, that she ends up with this guy, and next thing you know, he dies, she's wealthy, and then she dies from overdose, right? You can, win someone's sex over, their body over. Love, you can't win love with money. That takes a lot of work to get someone's love, right? So I think the part with Trump, which made him one of a kind, is, do you realize we now know about Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal, grab him by this? We know all of that stuff. And you know what people say? No one gives a shit.
No one cares.
No one gives a shit. Which, by the way, if you remember the moment Herman Cain, 13 years ago, whatever the timeline was, he's in the bus. He's not coming out because apparently him and his wife were fighting in the bus, and they found out while he was the CEO of this pizza company, he had a lover, or he had a, a mistress or something like that. Because of that, he stepped out. While Trump would come out and say, listen, it's my personal life. It's between me and my wife. We're moving on. What do you want to ask me? So Trump was the guy that, because he was so trained in New York to go up against these gangsters and tough guys and manipulators and media, he has been trained to get to this position. That's not everybody's job. So I think for him, he got so much moral authority today that if you cross him, the world is going to defend him, not you. Not the world. I'm not talking mainstream media, but the people that are his supporters. So I don't know if he needs it today. I don't know if he needs, I think an average, regular president that got up there, the traditional go be a lawyer and go be Congress and Senate and bullshit, yeah, that person needs a lot of that. I think from Trump's standpoint, Trump is like, look, if you're in, you're in. If you're not, let's go. If you're going to roll, you roll. But I don't give a shit about what mistakes you made. I mean, I know what I've done. And I'm like, let's go.
I think my concern as an employer would be, I don't know if this falls into your dichotomy, but okay, you have information on people. Will the person allow the enemy to use that information as leverage? And I'm the type of person where they may have something on me. I don't care. Publish it. But do my employees, are they able to be strong enough?
Yeah, it's the people around you is the
Or will
problem.
the enemy come and say, we have this information about you, now betray your mission?
Well, by the way, guess you know what that is?
What?
That's a pure test to find out who was loyal and who wasn't. So it's an awesome situation. It's a tier 1 test.
Tier 1
Because that's a real test. That's a real test. Then you're like, oh, so it wasn't. It was because it's, you're just benefiting from what you were getting. I got it. Cool. It's good to know now. I got it. No problem. We're good to go. These moments where you're tempted to steal money, where you're tempted to do certain things, where you're tempted to go through, what things we're investigating somebody right now. It's been going on for a few months. The stuff I found out yesterday of one of these guys that we've been investigating has done.
You're investigating in your
a former person that
employee?
used to work with us, yeah. Do you know what things we found? But by the way, you have to hear what he used to say. All the lines. James, you're like a father figure to me. Crying while behind closed doors. Taking money and taking all this stuff. But these are beautiful situations because you know what happens when the investigation's over with? We're going to publicly report it to everybody here, to our employees. You know why? It's the same thing we did in the insurance company. If anybody at all sold insurance doing forgery, we told everybody. We told everybody and said, that guy's insurance license is lost for 10 years. He can never do insurance again. Go ahead and test it and see what happens to you. If somebody went out there did any kind of stuff that was bad, we publicized it so people wouldn't do it again.
Accountability.
It's a form of accountability and it's a form of awareness. It's like, you ever seen the mom or the dad is trying to feed the kid and the kid is not eating and he puts it in the doll's mouth and then goes to the kid, goes this way. And this guy's down there, bam, hits the face of the little doll and then goes to the kid, puts the foot in the mouth.
Yeah.
It's a form of don't make this effing mistake, right?
Which is what our FBI is not doing.
Which is what our FBI is not doing.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's the part where some people are not happy with us not seeing the accountability that we were promised.
Correct. I would say people are enraged about this.
I would say they are. Yeah. I would say the part that they're what's the word?
Battling with?
Battling with is, look, there's so many great things that happened, but I really wanted to know what's going on over here. So do I compromise these two things that I really wanted to know? Because what are you doing to these kids and innocent kids? These are someone's daughter. They're someone's granddaughter. They're someone's sister. Are we not going to find this out? Are we just going to go hush-hush to this side? To this group that voted specifically to find out what's going on with Epstein and the kids, they're not the type that's going to forget about it.
Nope.
They're the type that's going to keep bringing it up until you either reveal or you have to deal with it.
We're 5 years in. People are still enraged.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to change. Any other items right now that is going on where for you politically, with what's going on with the White House right now, where politically for you, you're a little bit confused with?
Well, tell me what you mean by that, the White House.
Just some of the decisions. There's a lot of good. There's a lot of victories right now. You're seeing a lot of victories. You're seeing the big, beautiful bill. You're seeing, Russia, Putin, Trump talking. You're seeing China. You're seeing tariffs.
Before we move on from the Epstein thing real quick, if we could go to this is present day. This is the John Daly clip with Prince Andrew, the guy on undercover camera. Didn't you cover this on your show?
We did. Yeah, we did.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay, you guys covered this.
Yeah,
this
we
is,
did.
This is the...
Him basically saying he didn't like the fact that Prince Andrew, the brother of the late, of the king, was having sex with underage girls and he didn't like it.
Yeah, this is someone who's quite, loyal and a confidant to Prince Andrew. I got a lot of heat for this too because people say this doesn't prove anything, and I think one of the challenges here.
Yeah,
is
it
that
never
you're
does when it
confirming
goes against their
suspicions,
narrative.
you're getting them on video admitting it.
Nobody
Just
ever
having sex
admits
with
it when you
underage
call
girls.
them
And
out.
then this guy goes on Piers Morgan. I don't know if you're. I just think it's hilarious. I don't know if your producer could find that clip, but. And then he says, I think O'Keefe's great. This girl that he said, man, she was beautiful.
No shame.
And what did you think about what you said? I regret saying it. I regret being.
He admits that he was giving you credit for the girl.
And credit to Piers Morgan for grilling him.
Big time.
Grilling him. I was actually shocked that it might be hard to find this clip, but
Might
Piers
be on
Morgan
X.
was just grilling him. So that's I've been honest, Pat, I've been so heads down in my reporting. I mean, heads down on this Epstein reporting. I have not, I have not
followed everything that's
followed
going
the
on.
news
Okay.
right now in the world.
So let me
last 2
make
weeks.
the second request. So
Yeah.
my first request was Fauci. My
Yeah.
second request is Diddy. Have you at all thought about doing anything with Diddy, or you guys haven't focused on that one
I
yet?
think these are great ideas. No, I think there's I am and I should and I will. And I did get some sources with Diddy a year or two ago, but I think your idea. Let me ask you a better question. What is the thing that needs to be exposed? What, if exposed,
That's a good question.
would change things? That's helpful. To
Ooh,
know.
yeah, I mean, if you think about, okay, so if you want to be part of something legendary, I'm talking legendary, is in the 70s,
Epstein
60s,
thing, what?
50s, 40s, 30s, J. Edgar Hoover, all these guys, when the FBI first started with him,
That's such a good
there's no such
question.
thing as Italian, the crime family. That doesn't exist, right? Organized crime family doesn't exist. All right, now they know they had intel on him with the cross-dressing stuff, but in the 80s, Giuliani was able to bring down the mob with the help of the RICO law by this professor from Rutgers, that all of a sudden we saw a couple hundred mob bosses, underbosses, consiglieri, handcuffed, walking out, getting arrested. That was unfreaking believable.
Right.
It was something that everybody around the world heard about, the news, okay?
Them being perp walked.
Of course. If you, James, if you want something that is revolutionary, a breakthrough, it's Diddy because he's alive. The people are alive.
I
With
see.
Epstein, Epstein is
dead.
yeah. But if you get something from Leon Black, Rob, is Leon Black still alive?
I believe
If
so.
you go get something from Leon Black, which I don't know if you pursued or not.
Yes, 73 years old.
Okay, Leon Black is the one that apparently paid Epstein $150 million in consulting
Man's
fees
still alive.
for tax purposes. Ron, can you type in tax purposes or tax Epstein? Just type tax Epstein. So right there, Leon Black gave $170 million to Epstein for click on it, Rob, so we can read the story. So Leon Black, according to U.S. Senate Finance, he transfers $170 million to Epstein's accounts. And when they asked him why you did that, he said he paid the accused sex trafficker for tax advice. This is the most expensive tax advice anyone's ever given in the history of mankind. Leon Black, the billionaire financier and former CEO of Apollo Global Management, transferred $170 million to the Epstein covers for the course of 5 years. U.S. Senator Ron Wyden said in a letter that U.S. Justice and Treasury Department this week, not $158 million as previously reported. An investigation commissioned by Apollo's board appeared to have missed $12 million in transfer, which were discovered by investigators working with the U.S. So Leon Black, some of these guys are around, okay? Some of them are around on what Epstein did. But with Diddy, you're talking about Epstein, you're talking about Diddy, Hollywood, sports.
I mean, you could get Hollywood perp
You're
walked
talking
out,
about,
maybe.
these
Producers.
talent agencies.
I mean, they're all pretty much
producers, countries.
complicit in that.
Diddy's is, and it's going on right now. So if you did something while the hearing is going on, it's like you finding out something while O.J. Simpson's thing's going on.
Right.
And you leak something during the entire investigation. It's like you doing something and you drop it during Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
Right.
But Diddy to me is the comparable of an O.J. Simpson
And
thing.
what do you think the thing, if caught on video, that would change thing? I'd love to see people perp walk. I don't have the power to arrest, but what is the thing that needs to be on video in your mind? in your
Oh,
mind?
it's very easy for me.
Tell me.
It's very easy. It's gay sex with, men that, play straight.
I see.
And that is
And blackmail.
released.
In other words, these men have internal conflicts and they're blackmailed over this. And
Oh, and I think those video footages, believe it or not, I believe exist in different people's phones because I think these guys are so. Diddy thought he was so untouchable that no one was ever going to lose. And they would airdrop a video to each other.
like iPhone, iOS, just in the photos.
I am willing to bet that in some kind of a folder it's sitting there with these footages, that people save that's got a specific code that the video's all the way in and say, watch what I have with what we did here and here and there.
I think that too, and also the so-called blackmail. How do you think it actually works? Like, what is the conversation like in your mind, in your imagination? I'm just curious, you guys, because that helps me as an investigative understand what I'm trying to catch.
How do I think Diddy's model works?
Correct. What's your hypotheses?
I mean, it's very simple. You come to the house, you party, you have one of the girls that locks onto one of the guys who's one of your workers. They go upstairs. There's 17 cameras in there. He says, hey, man, can I get a room? Yeah, bro, just go use my room. Goes to the room, leaves. She's 17, she's 15. Or there's a guy in there, and I record it, I have it. And the next day I say, hey, I just want to let you know, here's what I got. It's very simple. Moving forward, anything I ask from you, I need you to do.
That's the thing that needs to be on video.
Yeah.
What you just said.
Yeah.
That would change everything, in my opinion.
I think that would be in text, not in video.
In a text message.
I think it would be in text messages. But I think that video, well, he's dumb enough to say it. He's dumb enough to say stuff like that. He's capable of saying stuff like that.
Well, you might have hearsay. In other words, and this is what happened with Prince Andrew. Another guy close to him said that this is what happened, which is still powerful.
Well, those guys are out there. The Gene Deals, the security, those guys have come out. They've done their part. There's a lot of people that have said stuff like that, like Suge Knight talking about his link to Clive Davis and all this other stuff. That stuff is coming out. But if you can get him tied to a few other people, I think this will be the biggest story you'll break.
I
Especially
am
with-
working on this, and I will work on this.
Okay. Especially with some of the stuff that was dropped this week. Some of the ecstasy pills and
With Obama's face on
yeah,
them.
some
Obama's.
very, very weird stuff going on here, James.
Oh, and there's just
Very.
with Obama and Obama, because he was hanging out with them a lot. He was at the Rock the Vote thing at his house, hanging out, partying, and then you have videos of like Christy Teigen with John Legend, and they asked Christy Teigen, "Where's the craziest place you've had sex in public?" And she goes, "There was that Obama thing," and John Legend's face looks like he saw a ghost. He looks like he saw a freaking ghost. Did you see that, Pat?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course.
Robbie, I sent it to you in the Slack, but
I just think, the part with what world
haven't
we're
seen
living
whatever
in
they're
today,
talking about.
We're living in a world today where we're not sure the U.S. government is gonna drop these stories because these are stories you can use to get intel.
I mean, this is, I commit to you that I will do this, and I usually do get the story. Sometimes it takes me a little longer than I'd like, but this is also very dangerous, wouldn't you admit, to do these
God.
stories?
Well, you subscribe to this lifestyle.
I certainly did. I remember you said, about a year ago, you said, James O'Keefe has chosen a tough life. And it was I think it was a more profound statement than even you intended. Not tough in the way that most people, usually they use the courts against me, legal, lawyers, that's a whole other conversation. But this is very dangerous, and the people that have come before me, like what's the movie To Kill a Messenger, with about a reporter in California who reported on the CIA and the drugs and the CIA, and they were given, and he committed suicide. I think he shot himself in the head twice, by the way.
Oh,
yeah, this guy. It was based upon Gary Webb, To Kill a Messenger. And there's
Shot
these are the
himself
reporters
in the
that
head
came
twice
before
by
me.
suicide.
Gary Webb managed to shoot himself in the head twice.
How?
That's a really
Very
impressive thing to
talented.
do.
That's super
Holy
talented.
moly.
You'd think the gun would fall out of your hand the first time.
You would think.
Yeah, he did some stories on the CIA. It was a great movie. And Gary Webb has a remarkable quote, an incredible quote, that I would like to read on the air in front of all of you. And it's from this book that was written called To Kill a Messenger. And I'm going to paraphrase because I can't pull it up, but it's Gary Webb says, you know, I was winning, I'm going to paraphrase it. I was winning awards. I was getting accolades. I was giving speeches. I won the Pulitzer Prize. And then I broke some stories. He's talking about the one about the CIA. That made me realize how misplaced my bliss had been. I started messing with the wrong people, and I began to realize I had misplaced my value in what I actually value. And I'm butchering the quote, but it's a profound quote. And then he committed suicide. So my point to you is that this is very dangerous, man.
No, the job you've chosen, it's tough because if you okay, here's the next part. If you have a lot of friends in high places, James, you're not doing your job right.
That's correct. But you know what everyone says in the conservative movement? Do you know Cash? Do you know Pam? Do you know this guy? It's all about rubbing elbows and people doing favors. I don't do that for a living.
No, that's not the profile of this job.
No.
The profile of this job is exactly what you're doing, and it's not.
Oh, that's what it is. I was winning awards, getting raises, lecturing college classes, appearing on TV shows, and judging journalism contests. And then I wrote some stories that made me realize how sadly misplaced my bliss had been. The reason I enjoyed so much smooth sailing for so long hadn't been, as I had assumed, because I was careful and diligent and good at my job. The truth was that in all those years, I hadn't written anything important enough to suppress.
It's just not for everybody because you're not a popular, cool person. For you to keep the T word for as long as possible, you can't have a lot of friends. And you know what the T word is?
The
trust.
Trust?
Yeah, to keep trust, you can't have a lot of friends. At high places. At high places.
That's right. It's a tough thing as a journalist to navigate the relationship between what I call autonomy and access. There's a tension in journalism because on one hand you have to protect your sources, and on the other hand you have to investigate, and it's very difficult. It's an art form.
Yeah.
It's an ethical line. At what point do I'm going to burn this? In business, you call it burning bridges. In journalism, you burn bridges every day. You report on powerful people. So it's very tough. It's
Well,
very
Jake
tough.
Tapper, look at what happened with Jake Tapper, right? Like with all the stuff that he's going through right now. Okay, why is he losing respect from other journalists?
Because we all knew what he's now reporting.
Yeah.
Like he's acting like it's news.
He's acting like it's news.
Yeah.
James, question before we finish it up here, because
Yes.
we got a few minutes here left.
Yes.
So, in your opinion, you spent a lot of time with Breitbart. What happened to him?
You mean like how did he die?
Yeah. What happened to him? The timing of it is very strange.
I don't have any inside information. I know his wife would always say to me, "Don't tell people that he was killed." Andrew had a heart condition. He had an enlarged heart, I believe. And the doctor said, you gotta stop, eating all this steak and drinking all this wine. You have to stop traveling. And I think he just truly pushed himself. That's my belief. I would share with the audience if I had any evidence of foul play. All I have is circumstantial evidence. I have no direct evidence. He dropped dead of a heart attack at 43. This was March 1st, 2012. I was 27. He was my mentor. Did you ever meet him?
Never.
Andrew was a remarkable man. He edited the Drudge Report at the time. He would tweet like 1,000 times a day. He was filled with righteous indignation. This is a different world 12 years ago. The media was different. You could engage with legacy media. You could tweet back and forth. You could have conversations. And he was a mentor of mine. We were very different people. He was more of an extrovert. I was at the time much more introverted. But he had a way about him. He was a warrior, and that's what we shared in common. I think what I would characterize myself, I'm a journalist, I'm also a warrior. I'm at war all the time, constantly. And he was too, but it aged him. Like, I'm now 40 years old. He died at 43, and in the last few years of his life, he just seemed to age. And he took things personally, and he was angry and furious and righteous and indignant and tweeting every tweet at the reporter and holding them accountable. It was. I've never met anyone like him. I still haven't met anyone like him. But I don't have any, information about his death other than I know he had a heart condition. That's all I can say.
And it was kind of, and God rest his soul, because I was a huge fan, and that James, that's how I found out about you. It was just weird that he was on stage claiming that he had tapes on Obama. He would call him a radical. I remember another time, the camera in his face, some reporters holding. He's yelling at the guy's recorder, and he's saying, "We're coming after you, John Podesta. We're coming after you, Big Soros."
There's this moment.
Yeah.
There's this moment where Andrew Breitbart is talking to Dave Weigel. I know this well, and this is a perfect story.
Yeah.
And the reporter's got his little pencil and paper.
Yeah.
I don't know if they do that anymore, but pencil writing down. And Andrew is talking to the reporter, and he screams into the reporter notebook, "Fuck you, John Podesta." Like he's only Andrew Breitbart. He's talking to the reporter notebook, not to the guy, but to the masses the reporter's writing to. That is a quintessential Andrew Breitbart moment, and I understand him because I am similar in that particular way. He was righteously indignant taking on this mainstream media.
That's it.
Oh, watch this.
Yeah, Rob.
Watch this.
Concerted effort, politics of personal destruction. Fuck you, John Podesta.
Watch, Big Soros. Look.
All right, well, you see
Watch this. Watch this.
Yeah.
When I talk, that's because I'm interested in this
You Big
ongoing,
Soros.
whatever the hell they're doing.
What's in your closet, John
He's
Podesta?
talking to the reporter notebook.
Big Podesta, Big Soros. Do you want us to play these games? Because we're playing to win.
This is Andrew Breitbart.
Dude. And then think about it, James. He has this attitude. I love the righteous indignation. I read the book. The guy's, like you said, he was going 100 miles an hour because he has the same. You guys weren't the same, James, but the message and getting the truth out there.
No, we spoke. I mean, Andrew, him and I, this man you just saw, him and I spoke 10 times a day. I mean, he was constantly talking to me, and then he died, and I was alone. I found the quote. I need to read this on the air, please. Quote. This is the CIA, the investigative reporter who exposed drug trafficking with the CIA and getting drugs in America. Gary Webb. I was winning awards, getting raises, lecturing college classes, appearing on TV shows, and judging journalism contests. I won the Pulitzer Prize. And then I wrote some stories that made me realize how sadly misplaced my bliss had been. The reason I'd enjoyed such smooth sailing in my career for so long hadn't been, as I'd assumed, because I was careful and diligent and good at my job. The truth was that in all those years, I hadn't written anything important enough to suppress.
Wow.
Gary Webb, To Kill a Messenger, shot himself in the head twice. Everyone that has come before me and who extreme truth tellers have been, like, you think of even historically, like on a much larger scale, they've been assassinated. JFK.
That's why the Breitbart story is different. And I understand your respect for the wife, and I'm sure she's sick and tired of hearing all this stuff because she just wants to move on. So you can take that position, but Rob, if you can pull that thing up, it's a little weird when you read about it and you see stuff about,
Let me see this.
Yes. So this is the coroner, right, Pat?
Yeah. So you got Michael Cormier, a forensic technician with LA County Office, died on April 20th, 2012, the same day Breitbart autopsy results were released. Cormier had complained of severe stomach pain and vomiting before being hospitalized, where he later died. Initial reports indicate that arsenic poisoning was a possible cause of death, and LA department did not immediately rule out foul play.
What are the odds?
Little weird.
Like, what are the odds that the day
that's a little suspicious?
That's a little suspicious. And the proximity of Cormier's death to the release of Breitbart's autopsy report led to online speculation about a possible connection between the two deaths. However, officials clarified that Cormier was not involved in Breitbart's autopsy. Deputy Sheriff Ed Winter stated that Cormier had nothing to do with the autopsy or the investigation. As of now, no definitive
coincidences
finding has been released regarding the cause of Cormier's death, and no official connection has been established between his death and that of Andrew Breitbart.
But if you had to say the odds, Pat, what are the odds that, because some people were saying that Andrew ran out and turned a completely different color, as if he was choking on something, that when the autopsy of him comes out, a guy in that same LA coroner's office dies of arsenic poisoning. He didn't get hit by a car. He didn't fall off of a bridge. He's died. Somebody poisoned him.
Yeah, the problem, this is Pat, this is extremely suspicious, and God willing, if anyone has proof, I mean, if there's someone in the hospital, if there's someone with knowledge of this, I'd love to report. The problem is I walk a fine line too, because if I come out and make a statement that I can't prove, then I lose credibility. So I have to be careful. But I hear what you're saying. This is incredibly suspicious. Yeah. And I don't even know what to say about it, except I hope that it's 13 years later here.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly.
We're still talking about JFK and who shot JFK.
Yeah, but the point here is the reason why I've never talked about Breitbart's and how I've never ever talked about it on any podcast,
right?
Ever. This is the first time. I don't know how many hundreds of interviews we've done. We've never brought it up. The only reason we bring it up is because to me he was a true believer. I think you're a true believer, and I think there's a handful of guys that are true believers, not mainstream. Because you can't be mainstream. You have to compromise to be mainstream.
Correct.
And, for you to go work for any of the big platforms, pick any one of them, you would have to compromise. And I don't think you're going to be doing that. So for guys like that, you need additional protection to be aware. It's like the other day, Trump was in Saudi and they offer him a drink and he just keeps holding it like this. I don't know if you saw that. He's just keeping holding a drink like this. He's going to hold a drink like that, hold a drink like this. So I think for a guy like you, as you're going through everything that you're doing with your circle, with your community, with people that maybe, is this the one? Look at this one here. It's classic. It's like, what do you want me to do with
He's
this?
not drinking a damn
So MBS
thing.
drank it, but he's not drinking it. He's just hanging on to it. It's like, it's great. It's
He
awesome.
looks down at it.
Yeah, just give him the respect, but he's not going to drink it.
And,
Look at that.
and one more reporter, Michael Hastings, died in a fiery car crash. He reported on Stanley McChrystal. So I'm well aware of the dangers, but, I mean, what do you really want to know? Am I afraid to die? Not really. I've lived a good life. I believe in what I'm doing. And I'm also a spiritual person. I believe in God. There's that saying, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. It's in Isaiah. I genuinely believe. I wear it around my neck. Border Patrol agent gave it to me. I rode the train of death in Mexico. I should have died. I didn't. So I believe in what I'm doing, and maybe I'll be the one that got away. That's all I can say.
Great. And gang, as you're watching this, do yourself a favor and go watch the podcast. We're going to put the link below. Rob, let's make sure we do that. Not the podcast, the documentary, the movie that just came out, The Truth Inside Veritas Part 1. It's 54 minutes. It's going to feel like 5 minutes too, because that's exactly how I felt when I watched it. It went like this. Boom. And I'm like, wow. Intense. The energy is going to be high from the beginning to the very end. I really enjoyed watching it. James, great having you back on. Appreciate you for coming down.
Thank you.
Anytime. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye, bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. I'm James O'Keefe. Been doing this journalism thing for about 20
bro, that was
years.
crazy.
Truth, justice, exposing corruption, everything that comes along with it. If you want to connect with me, talk to me about any of this, you can connect with me through Minect. You can see the QR code below. Look forward to hearing from you.
Do I pull the Mike Benz one? Ooh, I don't know. Oh, he has an Institute of Peace here too. Oh my God, there's so much stuff here. Oh, what was that Fern video? They're all so good. I haven't watched any of these. There's one with Eric Prince, the CEO of Blackwater. Oh man, there's a lot here now. What the heck? Who's this? Oh, dude, Joe Rogan with AJ Gentile. Oh my God, the Y-Files guy. Dude, there was a lot of stuff here. Oh, I do like Mike Benz. Dang. I don't know, it's like midnight though. Anything I start, we won't be able to finish. What if I get, dude? What if I would be strong enough to be a board member on James O'Keefe's staff? I'd like to think so, because I don't give a fuck either, but I don't know. Just pay me, like, I'm way more mission driven than money driven for sure. Maybe I send him an email and be like, hey, I'll come train me how to be a investigative journalist. I actually pulled his website earlier. He does have some openings, but they're like media stuff. I'm not really a media. Well, here I am streaming, but I'm not really a media person. Not like that, like video editing. Oh man, wonder if he has a YouTube video or channel.
The U.S. Institute of Peace was, think of it like the National Endowment for Democracy.
Is George Orwell in charge of naming these groups? National Endowment for Democracy subverts democracy. You know, all these peace groups are like aggressively anti-peace.
You can check out these protests online. They're hilarious. It's people protesting in the streets so that they are not allowed to know foreign funding of their own societies. Put the blindfolders on me. I'm not allowed to know whether that is funded by a foreign government and how much is funding. The CIA was running an initiative to control the education space during the Cold War to stop the spread of communist sympathizing teachings and curricula. All of this was repurposed against right-wing populism when Trump won in 2016.
I noticed.
According to George Soros, the Open Society Foundation was to provide basically a tax loophole for his kids. And it became such a powerful force in Washington that
I don't know if I have time
we
for this one. Give me Fern. The biggest sabotage in history? Oh yeah, we were watching that about the Nord Stream pipeline. What was on Bin Laden's hard drive? Damn, there's a lot of stuff here. Is this the most genius FBI operation? No. Where it's got to be in my history somewhere. It can't be that far down. Is this the? Oh, that is history. No. Oh, how a CIA base works.
Supporting technical consultations at the consulate. Jane responds.
Okay, let's start that over.
Jane Smith is sitting on a Lufthansa machine bound to Frankfurt, Germany. She empties her second glass of red wine and fastens her seatbelt because the plane is about to land. When Jane exits the aircraft, she goes straight to customs. She shows the officer her American passport. It's black. Why are you here? The officer asks. Supporting technical consultations at the consulate, Jane responds. The officer stamps her passport, and she passes through. Jane grabs some euros from an ATM, takes a cab to a nearby hotel, and checks in. You see, Jane lied a little just now, during the customs check. She is not working for a consulate, and despite her passport, she is no diplomat. Jane is a CIA agent, a hacker. She is visiting a covert base of her agency, secretly set up within the American consulate in Frankfurt. But this base, in the heart of Europe, is just one of a giant network spanning all across the globe. What are their functions? And how do these bases operate on foreign territory?
CIA's global hacking program.
Spy stations, Methoden der CIA.
What are the Americans doing now?
Jane enters the hotel room and drops off her bags. She was prepared for this trip. She's been given instructions on how to get around in Frankfurt. Stores are closed on Sunday, gas stations are not a good place for fine dining, stuff like that. We all know this thanks to the extensive leaks called Vault 7 from a few years back. Generally, this video largely relies on leaked information and statements of retired agents. It was a 9-hour flight from Washington, D.C. to Frankfurt. Jane is pretty exhausted and takes a shower. She is very careful not to leave anything that could identify her unattended. She takes her phone and laptop with her to the bathroom. Freshly dressed, Jane takes the U5 subway towards Pringesheim. She gets off at Gießener Straße, just a few hundred meters north from the consulate. Frankfurt hosts the largest U.S. consulate in the world. Officially, it is serving American residents in the region, but in truth, it is doing much more than that. At the main gate, Jane shows her black passport and is handed a yellow visitor's badge. She follows the signs to the employee entrance alongside the consulate building on the left. Jane holds up her yellow badge at the door and is buzzed into the building by a guard. Inside the building, Jane walks through a number of corridors and through a large heavy door to Post 1. A U.S. Marine is waiting behind a glass window. Jane gives her the yellow badge and she gets a blue one instead. Jane can finally enter her new office and get to work. She calls her person of contact and gets to know the other agents at the station. In 2013, news broke that the U.S. spied on then German Chancellor Angela Merkel's
That was
private phone
crazy.
for over 10 years.
The NSA may have been spying
That's
on
true,
Chancellor
by the
Angela
way.
Merkel.
A spokesman for the German leader described the idea as totally unacceptable.
The operation was run by the so-called Special Collection Service, a spy unit of the NSA and CIA. Officially, it does not exist. Unofficially, it is running spy operations from almost 100 U.S. embassies all across the world, including Frankfurt. But Jane works for another unit here. She works for the European branch of the Center for Cyber Intelligence, the CIA's hacking division. Jane and others are developing cyber weapons. There are over 1,000 hacking systems and several hundred million lines of code in the CIA's arsenal. Some of these hacking tools are extremely powerful. The CIA could turn devices from Apple, Google, Samsung, and many others into secret microphones. There are tools that bypass encryption from messengers like WhatsApp, Signal, or Telegram, allowing the agency to collect text and voice messages. But there are also attack systems like fine dining, which only work from up close. This is where Frankfurt's strategic location comes into play. The Schengen Agreement allows Jane to travel from Frankfurt to almost any European country without border control. If Jane wanted to penetrate high-security targets that are not connected to the internet, she could simply take a train, stick a USB drive loaded with malware into a target PC, and be back in Frankfurt by supper. Jane is a very talented hacker. If one day she decided to leave the CIA, she could have a very promising career as a cybersecurity expert. All she'd have to do is build a portfolio and launch her own website. Unfortunately, Jane is not very creative when it comes to design. With Odoo's intuitive life, with a checks out of her hotel room and buys to her colleagues, checks out of her hotel room and buys a single malt whiskey with her remaining euros in the duty-free shop at the airport. Jane's next destination is Australia. Jane gets off the plane and walks to customs, and things do not go smoothly. One of the officers seems suspicious about her and selects Jane for secondary screening. But she is prepared. Agents like Jane are usually trained here, Camp Peary, or how most people in the CIA call it, the farm, a roughly 10,000-acre piece of land near Williamsburg, Virginia. It was established during World War II as a military training center. Later, it was transformed into a camp for Italian and German war prisoners. In 1951, the CIA took over and turned it into a secret spy school. Of course, not officially. In fact, the CIA has built an entire fake city. There are multiple houses and dormitories for students and staff. For training, the site has several shooting ranges, boathouses at the river, driving courses, and an airfield. Students learn everything they need to know about life as a secret agent in the field, from basic weapons trainings all the way to the handling of explosives, how to evade pursuers, and field surveillance. Students practice how to infiltrate a border that is tightly guarded by watchtowers and police dogs. Enemy capture is simulated by kidnapping students from their dorm and interrogating them. There is even a mock prison where students learn how to deal with solitary confinement. If training needs to be even more hardcore, students are brought to Harvey Point, just a few hours south of the farm. This is the place where, among other things, the operation to kill Osama bin Laden was planned and trained. Jane stands in front of a customs officer at the Australian airport. She remembers how to survive secondary screening. According to a CIA training manual, the two most common questions in this situation are why are you here and where are you staying? Jane learned how to maintain her cover, no matter what. When asked, Jane gives a quick and concise answer. No pause and no delaying sounds between questions and response, just as the manual says. She knows that any unnecessary information or overly specific answers might lengthen the interview.
Overly
so she keeps it short
specific.
and simple. She tries to stay calm. No swallowing, no lip biting, nothing that can make her seem nervous. And it works. After a few minutes, the officer hands Jane her passport and she's free to enter the country.
Casino full of agents.
Jane is sitting with her colleagues in a casino in Alice Springs, a small town right in the heart of the Australian outback. There are a lot of Americans all around her, which is not unusual. Most of them work at Pine Gap, a nearby military base run by the Australian and US government. Jane and others are playing a weird American dice game called Craps when a group of Australian YouTubers join them. Together they drink, they laugh, and maybe talk a bit too much about their work.
This guy doesn't get it. Listen to him.
The Americans in this casino are no ordinary soldiers, and Pine Gap is not your usual military base. Pine Gap is a top-secret spy facility.
What are you doing there?
Roughly 1,000 people work at the so-called Joint Defence Facility, which is a quite misleading name, in fact. In its early years, Australians only worked as cooks, painters, or janitors, while today almost half the staff is Australian and the other half American. In reality, the CIA and the NSA call the shots here. While Pine Gap was originally used as a defensive site to keep track of Soviet nuclear missiles during the Cold War, U.S. intelligence quickly realized how useful this base could truly be. Today, it is the U.S.'s most important intelligence collection station in the world. There are 38 radar dishes all across the base. Many of them are enclosed in random, huge golf ball-like structures. They are built to hide and protect the antennas inside them. Most of these antennas communicate with U.S. spy satellites, like Orion 3, 5, 7, and 9. These spy satellites are geosynchronous. They move in orbit with exactly the same speed as the Earth's rotation. This way, the CIA can intercept almost all wireless communication from Europe, Africa, and Asia 24/7. The immensely powerful NSA spy programs, Echelon and X-Keyscore, that Edward Snowden made public in 2013, are also operated from Pine Gap. These programs are used to systematically collect everything, from online chats to phone calls and mails. At the heart of the base sits the operations building. On a total of around 20,000 square meters, roughly the size of a small IKEA, the CIA, NSA, and other agencies analyze all incoming intelligence data. Pine Gap played a vital role in America's war on terror. It provided real-time data for soldiers on the battlefield in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it was used to locate targets for U.S. drone strikes, during which hundreds of civilians were killed. A very recent report indicates that Pine Gap intelligence may have assisted Israeli forces to attack targets in Gaza. For that reason, a group of protesters tried to block the entrance to Pine Gap at the end of last year. Pine Gap has been criticized by many different groups before. Some people have even managed to enter the facility. More recently, these Australian YouTubers, for example. Be sure to check out their video. It inspired us to make this video in the first place.
So be more hyped.
Did you hear that? It sounded like bombs going off.
No.
Jane has seen places few people in the world have ever been to. Covert hacking bases in the heart of Europe, training facilities in the US, and spy stations in Australia. She knows many of the CIA's secrets, like the fact that in 2000, an American soldier from Pine Gap reportedly started a secret swingers club in Alice Spring, which held wild sex parties. But there are places that not even Jane will ever have access to. On September 6, 2006, President George Bush admitted what many people had already suspected.
So I'm announcing today that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Abu Zubaydah, Ramzi bin al-Shibh, and 11 other terrorists in CIA custody have been transferred to the United States Naval Base at Guantanamo Bay.
In this speech, Bush acknowledged that the CIA was running a network of secret prisons all across the world, so-called black sites. The most well-known CIA prison is Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. The prison was built for international terrorist suspects. Just 4 months after the attacks on 9/11, the first 20 people arrived. But Guantanamo is no regular prison. In most cases, there are no official charges, no trials, and no formal convictions. A total of 800 people were brought here. Some have been exposed to enhanced interrogation techniques, most commonly known as torture. Often, the CIA did not have clear evidence on their inmates. The exact number and locations of black sites are still unknown. Some were run by foreign secret services. At least 10 of these prisons were built and operated by the CIA.
Black sites.
Over 50 governments participated in some way. If the CIA suspected someone of being a terrorist, they sometimes became part of the agency's extraordinary rendition program, or simply kidnapping. The suspect was illegally shackled, blindfolded, and transported via plane to one of the CIA's black sites. Some of these prisons were allegedly planned from the CIA base in Frankfurt, while the farm was allegedly involved in rendition flights. One of the most important prisons of the CIA was here, on a Polish military base near the small village of Stara Gikute. Inside this 2-story villa, the CIA built one of its very first prisons after 9/11, codenamed Quartz. The CIA tortured multiple suspects here. As compensation for using the place, the CIA paid at least $15 million and outfitted the base with $300,000 worth of security cameras. After many years of denial, in 2014, the Polish government finally admitted that it hosted the secret CIA prison. Since then, the European Court of Human Rights has found multiple European countries responsible for letting the CIA violate several human rights in prisons on their territory. In 2009, President Obama ordered for all black sites to be closed. But to this day,
and then
Guantanamo
drone
Bay
strike
still holds
civilian
roughly
or
30
drone stroke. He ordered a drone strike on American civilians, by the way. Oh, wait, that's it? What? Okay, dude. I thought we were just getting started. What was the other one then? This one's going to be interesting with Joe. I just want to do that myself, though. Eric Prince is good, but I've heard a lot of that story already. Is this with...
When you hear about...
Nah, I don't know who that is. Why can't we divide by Z? No, where is it? Hold on. Oh, there's the Mike Benz one, but he's going to use a lot of terms that chat's going to be confused about unless I give a bunch of context. Here's him with Institute of Peace. It's 14 minutes. Tim Sweeney. Who's this? Fortnite, Unreal Engine, the future of gaming. Who is Tim Sweeney?
Humans are by far the hardest part of computer graphics.
CEO of Epic Games. That's who he is. Get the fuck out of here. I might actually listen to what he has to say, though, so I can realize how dumb or not dumb he is, I guess. He pushes out a lot of crap, so regardless of his philosophy, his results are pretty terrible. Oh yeah, Deepwater Horizon. Covert Cabal? Who is this? Oh, what is that Cappy video? Cappy Army? Oh, hell yeah.
Goodness gracious me, U.S. intelligence satellites picked up something wild when they were scanning about 30 miles southwest of Beijing. They noticed signs that the Chinese Communist Party has been quietly constructing the largest military command center in all of human history. Located in the western hills of Beijing, this colossal facility spans over 4 kilometers in length. That's 10 Pentagons worth of military infrastructure. To put this whole thing into perspective, it'll cover over 1,000 football fields. Is this the world's single biggest prepper project, or is it evidence of a massive looming war on the horizon? Former head of China analysis for the CIA, Dennis Wilder, believes it's the latter. He said, if confirmed, this new advanced underground command bunker for the military leadership signals Beijing's intent to build not only a world-class conventional force, but also an advanced nuclear war-fighting capability. But of course, that's what the CIA wants us to think, those psyoping sons of bitches. I'm gonna need a little more evidence than that if you want to convince me that China's planning an invasion. Well, take a look at this gigantic 820-meter-long ferry. That's 3 times the size of the Titanic. Looks
is this for
enough,
Taiwan?
Except U.S. intelligence assessed they're designed for an invasion because China was observed training with these ships to prepare to land thousands of tanks and troops on shore. The way it works is kind of fascinating. The ships link together, forming this single long bridge that goes from the ship that's positioned all the way deep out in the water right onto the shore,
That's
interconnecting
smart.
like a bunch of modular Legos. According to Hai Sutton, who's just a legend of a naval expert, he's the guy that originally spotted these. Its bridge is 120 meters long, so it can extend out past the beach which would skip the annoying sandy part of an amphibious landing and put you right on a coastal Taiwanese road. Growing up, I used to take the ferry from Port Jeff on Long Island to Connecticut, and even getting civilian cars on board of a ship is a giant circus.
Yeah, I've seen
what
that.
I've never seen
It kind of
is
sucks.
a civilian ferry that interlinks like a maritime transformer invasion platform. It's a Chinese naval invasion barge human centipede. I think that's what you call docking. Now look it up on the Urban Dictionary. Wait, do not show that result for the love of God. Satellite images show China's preparing more than 5 of these giant ferries. It solves 2 giant problems for China. First, they didn't have the capacity to move thousands of troops ashore with their landing craft until now. And second, if you look at the geography of Taiwan, there's only about a dozen beaches suitable for an amphibious assault, and only 2 of those are
when
near
does
beaches. These
the
platforms extend out, and they allow China
want to
skip
take
rocky,
Taiwan?
rough beach and land in new, unpredictable places. To get an expert opinion on all this, I
think
spoke
it was
with
2025.
former CIA officer Mick Mulroy.
Our partner countries, and we have a lot of them, some treated countries like Japan and South Korea, but also Indonesia and other countries out there.
2049? I think
as
it's
you
before
mentioned,
that.
Chris, about Chinese activities. They claim territorial waters that's not theirs. They build islands.
2027?
And they claim it's China. It's been described to me by many of our country partners out there. They simply come and take everything, don't worry about any kind of sustainable fishing methods, and it's not even their waters, right? So it's a huge problem economically.
Fuck,
and I
I've
think
heard a couple
militarily.
different ones.
The
I thought it
problem
was.
is what one person sees as evidence of an impending invasion, another person might see as a defensive preparation, which is why it's so important to have that good intelligence to figure out the intention of your adversaries. I'd like to introduce you to my dad, Papa
That's
Cappy, and my brother, Peter Cappy. We live far apart from each other, so the way we like to stay in touch is by playing video games together, which is War II ship. On the Naval War College about the bar, allowing me and my family to have some quality time together. Now back to the video. Michael Dam, a retired U.S. Navy intelligence officer, wrote a paper published on the Naval War College about the barges, and he said he no longer doubts China's preparing for war by 2027.
Oh, that's
saying, quote,
2027,
I will
okay.
tell you my mind has really changed over just the last 12 to 18 months, seeing the scale of the infrastructure and capability improvements that the Chinese have made. And it's not just military analysts and the CIA noticing this ramp up. I've personally seen a surge in listings on Temu for waifu body pillows, which are not explicitly mentioned in Chinese war doctrine, but it's an open source indication, I think, that thousands of Chinese soldiers may be preparing to leave home for long, lonely nights. In this paper, Dam says the barge is built
That's
to
actually
accommodate
one of the
small-
craziest data points I ever seen, but it actually checks. People don't realize how easy they give themselves away. If you're able to boil down things to like what the average person would do and then extrapolate that, it can be a very powerful tool. So these anime body pillows are very popular, we'll say, in these Eastern cultures. So if you have a lot of like young males and anime enjoyers and they're part of the military, if they're doing a secret operation, they're not supposed to say anything. They still have to, you know, get their toiletries ready. They have to pack their sea bags or army bags, and they would do all the things that you would think that you would do if you were going to be gone for 3 months. So they're like packing for a vacation. So you can get these like what sounds like really weird data points. Actually, that data point is the one that actually convinces me more than all this stuff is pretty good, right? But this is where you would take a bunch of military data points on one side and you're kind of triangulating it. You have all these military indicators that something's going to happen, but it doesn't guarantee. And then you have the, what would I call them? What did he call them? I think he gave it a name that I just forgot. Let me grab the transcript. What are we in? 520, 520, 520, 520. I don't think it's something else. Quality video retired.
And get started for free on the PC. Big thanks to World of Warships for supporting the channel and allowing me my snake. Will tell you my mind has really changed over just the last 12 to 18 months, seeing the scale of the infrastructure and capability improvements that the Chinese have made. And it's not just military analysts and the CIA noticing this ramp up. I've personally seen a surge in listings on Temu for waifu body pillows, which are not explicitly mentioned in Chinese war doctrine, but it's an open source indication, I think.
An open source indication that something is going to happen. This is a really, really hard to find but really good data point. This is where if you understand the culture or tendencies of a population, you can get some really good data points that kind of give military operations away. And this is a good example of one of those. So it seems kind of silly, but like these are things that like the military looks for, or really good intelligence analysts look for, where you have a very good understanding. Like, so if you were to say, let me see if I can find another example. I'm trying to think. Something that's like more relatable. I guess maybe like submarine stuff. Like people would buy a bunch of hot sauces from the Nex, which is the equivalent of a Navy Walmart. I'm trying to think of like things that like an American soldier would do over like I don't know, a German soldier that would give it away. But if you saw, I mean, maybe buying a lot of like iPads and things. Something like stuff that you would need for 6 months, buying a lot of Nintendo Switches, something. If you saw the sales like rocket on things that you would only buy if you were going to be gone to 3 to 6 months around a naval base or an army base, that could be an indication that people are about to ship out somewhere. And it's all open source, right? If you were to just hang out around the base and all of a sudden like all the video games are gone, you go in one day it's full and the next day they're all like gone. Or all of the food's been ravaged, or all of the the storage stuff's been ravaged around the area. That's an open source data point that something's going on and going to happen that has nothing to do with like any of the other military data points. Like seeing this, I'm massively impressed by whoever found this. To the outsider, it looks silly, but to me, this is one of the most important data points I've seen from his argumentation, actually.
The CIA noticing this ramp up. I've personally seen a surge in listings on Temu for waifu body pillows, which are not explicitly mentioned in Chinese war doctrine, but it's an open source indication, I think, that thousands of Chinese soldiers may be preparing to leave home for long, lonely nights. In this paper, Dam says the barge is built to accommodate small tactical vehicles and trucks up to 50-ton tanks even. A single heavy combined arms battalion of 150 vehicles would likely need a minimum of 30 minutes to offload from one of these roll-on, roll-off ships using the temporary pier. I know no one in my unit in Iraq left home without this. That, or it's something I could never get approved to expense until now that I'm running my own company. So basically, these giant invasion barges are sitting docks for 30 minutes while they offload vehicles. Just big old targets waiting to get hit in the teeth with a HIMARS missile. But China plans to land uncontested after a massive bombardment. Let me print out his paper so I can better show you exactly what I mean. Oh wait, why isn't this printer working? We should go to war for ink resources so it doesn't cost $60 every time I print out a dang paper.
The primary job, of course, for the CIA is to collect information, intelligence, right, that informs the products that they produce for policymakers to then make decisions. We need to make decisions based on facts of what the adversary intends.
That's what I do. I make decisions based off of facts.
Does China actually intend to invade Taiwan? Does China look at it, the problem, and say that's going to be such a costly endeavor that we're just going to maybe isolate Taiwan, put a naval blockade on it? We need to know how they're thinking and what they're thinking, because that's going to be how we...
That's why there's a big push to move semiconductor production into the U.S.
Well, they just released footage of what they say is the first ever drone mothership that, according to China, can release 100 kamikaze drones, a swarm of drones.
Drones scare the fuck out of me, actually.
A big old mothership.
China has unveiled a new weapon. Chinese media is calling it a drone mothership.
And according to China, it can launch anti-air
That
missiles.
chick
it can
is
launch
an
anti-ship
Indian
missiles, and it just got this big
an
old
India
payload
reporter
that
because I was watching her
use to
for
overwhelm Taiwan.
the India-Pakistan stuff. I think she's funny as fuck. You can't tell it there, but she kept roasting Pakistan during the entire news thing. It was funny.
Defensive network. However, according to Western analysts, it's
I
a
had
big
played
old
on stream.
sitting
I saw
duck in
somewhere
the
else.
sky that is just a big juicy target for incoming F-35 air-to-air missiles. But it doesn't stop there. Once on the ground, China revealed their next step of the plan, which is to release drones that look like birds. It's confirmed drones are not real. New terrifying nightmare unlocked. Then I became a little bit less scared when I saw how they plan to deploy them using segways, which is a pretty gay way to use them, and not in the good way where two guys are smooching. And that all comes back to this construction project. At the center of coordinating these plans is this gigantic Chinese military headquarters sitting at the head of all of this. So we're going to find out what it is about this.
But back with those waifu pills, would the spike only be from certain areas, or is it worldwide? Would be having more info where the peeps are coming from? He was just using an indication of the Chinese military. So it'd be just probably specific to their country. Like waifu body, like Chinese males don't have a monopoly on wanting waifu body pillows. But you're not, it's like one of those things where like you'd be selling this thing all the time, but it would be really crazy in a week to sell if you sold like 100 a day and now you're selling like 2,000 today, right? Where there's like a unnatural, like you have like a general level of sales and then it's like a massive spike, like in this region. So now you have like this trend and it's bucking the entire trend, and then you're like, well, why did we sell 2,000 today instead of the 100 that we usually sell? Whatever it is. So like the data point by itself doesn't really mean anything other than the fact it's like an outlying data point outside of everything else. It's like, what the fuck? Right, it's like if you got up to like wherever you live, right? If you house and all of a sudden there's 1,000 cars in your driveway, you're like, whoa, like you know something's going on, right? Like there's not supposed to be 1,000 cars here. There's supposed to be some cars here, and there's always some cars here, but now there's 1,000. So you're like, oh, maybe there's an event going on or a party or whatever. So think of that for like the Temu body pillows, I guess. Is, you know, where they're used to selling them, and then one day there's like 2,000. You're like, oh, something must be going on. The Lambu scam? I don't even know what that is. I'm just impressed because I love those data points. Like that, I don't know. Maybe I'm a nerd for that type of data. But those are the most the data point by itself isn't like super strong. That what makes it strong is it's not attached to the military data points at all. So what you're trying to do with intelligence is make like a triangle out of it, and each point of the triangle can't touch each other. So like Temu body pillows, nobody thinks military aged males, right? But so it's a data point that that when combined with the military buildup actually forms a really solid line for the triangle. Because like other data points on the other side of the triangle would be like, you know, troop movements, amassing troops in a specific area. You know, I would just say this right-hand corner of the triangle would be all military data points, and this other one would be like economical data point. And then I'm trying to think of another outlier data point. Maybe if all like a housing data point where a bunch of people are like leaving their house or selling their cars or selling their houses or something en masse would kind of complete the triangle to make it like a high probability that the military is probably about to do something big. Because without one of those, like, because troops move around all the time. So like the leading up to the Russia-Ukraine war, there was like a massive buildup of troops on the border. and people were arguing whether it was like them going to invade or whether they were just there for defense, right? Like, but the CIA probably had other data points that indicated that they were actually going to go in. Things that you would only do if you were trying to invade versus things that you would do if you were just trying to reinforce a point. Oh, they're a new pop brand toy? Oh, I had no idea. There's spikes in data all the time. It just depends. Like, you just see, it's like like with anything, like especially politically, you need context with it. So just saying the data point doesn't really mean anything without the context. This is something I think I'm just inherently good at. Not really the data point, but taking a bunch of data points like this and putting them together to, with high probability, predict things. And one of the main ways I do it is if you can boil it down to the individual. So, like, what would you do if you're preparing for a 3-month trip or a 6-month trip? Like, what would you do if somebody handed you $100,000 and said, hey, you just need to lie on this form? Things like that. Things that I think are semi-abstract, but if you take enough abstract data points, you can do with high probability this thing probably happened. Making sours a predictor we're prepping? Probably. Yeah, if all the flour instantly disappears from the market or whatever, or yeast, yeah. It's tough to come up with hypotheticals just because, like, I would have to see the point to begin with. Like, I need a starting point and I need to be able to work out. So to come up with hypotheticals is kind of tough. But anyway, the team who did it, that's actually really good.
That has American spooks so spooked. The scale of this investment is just staggering, and it's part of the reason why I got so interested in this story.
People get mad about my Russia take because I like to look at it through the point of view, like I get the U.S. point of view and I get Europeans' point of view and NATO's point of view. But it's real tough for people to look at it from the Russian point of view or the Chinese point of view. Right? So the general Russian point of view on the war in Ukraine, a lot of it has to deal with the fact that after the Cold War, like NATO, here, let me give a little background here. Why was NATO formed? NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So NATO, the entire reason NATO even exists, it was formed in 1949 primarily to counter the threat of the Soviet expansionism into Europe during the Cold War. That's the entire reason NATO is formed. So I'm sure you guys are asking yourself, well, if it was formed to counter Soviet expansionism and the Soviet Union collapsed in the early 90s, why is NATO still around? That is a really good question, chat. Why is NATO still around? If it was literally formed to make sure the USSR at the time collapsed, and it was successful in making the USSR collapse, why is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO as it's more widely known, why is it still around? That's a really good question. Why is NATO still around after the USSR collapsed? Or Russia now, but... I'm just curious what it says. Well, pretty much you had this entire massive bureaucracy apparatus. This is what happens with a lot of bureaucracies and people. If you even boil it down to people at work, right? Like, if somebody has a job that if they solved that actually problem would get them fired, they're never incentivized to actually solve the problem. And what I mean is, like, the whole reason NATO was formed was to get the USSR to collapse. once it collapsed, they're now irrelevant. So what NATO did, instead of like disbanding, they found new unique reasons to stick around. So that's the CCP stuff. The Balkan conflicts, Bosnia and Kosovo, which was in the 90s, where they were focused on crisis management and peacekeeping. But they weren't here because of the Balkan conflicts in Kosovo and Bosnia. Article 5, NATO's Mutual Defense Clause remains a cornerstone for member state security. Even without the USSR, countries value the alliance's guarantee of potential aggressors. Reinforced after 9/11. Like, the U.S. literally used it to get Europe to help us and not, like, to go into Afghanistan, Iraq, which we probably shouldn't have used it for, but that's a whole different story. Okay? And then it sticks around, like, for 15, 18 years. And then when Russia goes in and invades Georgia, now NATO's like, okay, well, now Russian aggression's back, and so now we have a reason to still be around. So the pretext of all that is because if you look at it from a Russian's point of view, okay? Think that you're a Russian and you're the government of Russia, okay? Your entire economy collapsed. Your entire population destabilized in the 90s, and you went through this, like, change with Boris Yeltsin, which was the president before, like, Putin. Look at it as if, like, if the U.S. had, like economically collapsed and a lot of people were starving for food, and what happened, instead of, like, that getting fixed, a segment of the government started pulling down and toppling statues like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and the Founding Fathers, because even though it was like a communist state, like, they had, you know, how long was the USSR around? How long? It was around for 70 years. So imagine you had this, like, government apparatus that generation after generation had only ever known, and they learned to idolize, like, Lenin and the leaders of the Soviet Union, and then your economy collapses. They would blame, like, the U.S. and they would blame NATO for the reason that they collapsed, and now they're sitting in these food lines. And not only that, they're pulling down their idols that they used to have, their equivalent of Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, right? So you can see how the Russian population and even the government apparatus would be very, very negative towards the West and NATO, and would be blaming them for their entire collapse and their economic predicament that they find themselves in. So you can kind of see why a lot of that population would have a lot of animosity. Now, instead of, this is like a foreign policy debate, so instead of, like, NATO and the U.S. like backing off and disbanding that, they kept that there. So Russia's, like, internally rebuilding from, like, the 90s to, like, 2005. NATO it keeps adding more and more countries to this NATO alliance, which was literally formed to go against Russia. And year after year, more and more countries keep joining this alliance against Russia. So imagine if like Mexico and Canada and all of the European, like, all of Europe had a NATO, but it was a NATO against the US. Okay? So imagine year after year, you know, Spain joins the NATO treaty against the US. Then it's Greece, and then it's Germany, and then France, and then Finland. You're like, wow, this kind of sucks, right? And then one day they wake up and Mexico and Canada want to join NATO. And they're right on your border. Like, the U.S. wouldn't put up with that for a second. So, like, Russia owns its piece of going into Ukraine, and they still should have never gone into Ukraine. I'm just giving the perspective of the Russian population that when Ukraine wanted to, when NATO started to, like, flirt with the idea of bringing Ukraine into NATO, I think that, like, helped spark the entire fucking war. of Russia going into Ukraine to begin with. And there's actually more historical context. Is the last time Russia was invaded through like, maybe pull up a map. Map of Europe with mountains. I need a good map here. I don't know, the general point, but like what mountain range is that? I guess it doesn't really matter. I think it's the Pyrenees Mountains. No. Let me ask Gronk. Is on the west side. Ukraine. It is Carpathian Mountains. Okay, so when the USSR collapsed, that's when Ukraine gets formed. They break off of Russia and form their own state. Same thing with Georgia and a lot of the other countries that are kind of like around modern day Russia. Like Ukraine was part of Russia until they collapsed in like the late 80s, early 90s, and they broke off. So Russia used to have the Carpathian Mountains as a natural barrier to the rest of Europe. So they had this like natural barrier on the west side, which was a natural, very, very defendable position that used to be on Russia's west side of think of like Rocky Mountains, right? Like it was hard for other countries to come up and like go through Russia because of this big mountain range. Well, now if Ukraine is in NATO, if you look at this map, oh god, I keep clicking this one. And this is the North European plain. Oh my god. Why can't I just get... You won't scale, will you? Oh my god. Why am I in Pinterest? It's so annoying to try to grab an image off of here. I thought there was just like a world atlas thing like this. Instead of having this nice big mountain range here, it's now open plain into Kiev. Like it's just a huge plain, flat land, really easy to move troops, tanks, and all kinds of stuff. Where before you had this nice natural big barrier you had to go through. So that's another reason. Anyway, that just give a lot more context around like seeing it from the other country's perspective instead of your own. Which is literally what intelligence analysts and the State Department, and there's literal professionals that do this every day for a living in the government. But the average American, like, either isn't capable or absolutely refuses to see it through any other perspective than their own. Because I think a lot of people see being able to explain how somebody or another country looks at something, they see it as defending the thing instead of just explaining it. Now, in any other thing that you explain, it doesn't work like that. If I explain math, it doesn't mean I'm defending 2 + 2. But when you're dealing with things where people are emotionally invested, when you explain it from somebody's point of view they massively disagree with or they don't like, it is inherently seen as like defending them, which is why a lot of people I think are uncomfortable empathizing and trying to understand somebody else's point of view that they massively disagree with. Because I think it's seen as support or like weakness internally.
Because
for some
construction
reason.
experts in the United Kingdom have speculated the construction costs at between $150 and $200 billion. That's absolutely freaking wild, boys. It makes me want to say ooh woo in the most unironic way.
Oh, the body
far
pillows, yeah.
exceeds the entire annual military budget of every nation except for the United States and China itself. It's more than 3 times what the US spent on the entire Manhattan Project, adjusted for inflation. The actual cost for the American Pentagon construction project had a budget equivalent to about $1 billion in today's money.
But what does that even mean when you say this is, quote, the Chinese Pentagon? And why does it sound kind of racist when I say that out loud? It's a shortcut way of saying it'll be the brain of China's military operations. Because when the American Pentagon was first built during World War II in 1941, it was created with the purpose of centralizing military leadership. It was the nerve center of decision-making, the scale of which had never been seen before in military history. The Pentagon became the world's largest office building at the time, with some 20,000 employees there. Since then, in every major American war, it's where various combatant commands from like the Army, Air Force, and Navy would meet to all coordinate. You can't combine arms without somewhere to combine them. This is something that today seems obvious to us. Seems like that's just a given. Duh, there should be a war room where everybody collaborates. But it only seems obvious because of the success of the Pentagon. In fact, other countries actually work very hard to do the opposite, to make sure that their militaries are separated and that each branch is isolated. And we'll get into about the reason why that is more later. What makes all this particularly interesting to me, though, is the timing of it all. Full-scale construction of this project began in mid-2024, even as China's property sector was collapsing.
Oh, that
We've all
started
heard the
last
stories
year?
of ghost cities and half-built skyscrapers abandoned across China when a nation diverts massive resources to work 24/7 around the clock on this underground
Interesting.
massive military facility at the same exact time as that's happening. On face value, it can be puzzling. At the same time, over the past 3 years, the Chinese military has stepped up military drills in the Taiwan Strait in what appears to be a practice run to establish a full blockade. Meanwhile, China continues to officially deny that the military project even exists. When the Chinese embassy in Washington
This is another thing that I've realized people don't understand is you literally can't believe anything a government ever says openly ever. Like they look at like, oh, the government said they were going to do this. Like that means absolutely nothing, because what is China going to do? Say, yes, we're running these drills around Taiwan in an effort to prep for an invasion? Of course they're not going to fucking say that. Like they're never going to say what they're actually doing. So I never understand why people take any... I'm not saying he is. He's just saying what they're saying. But there's a lot of times see people say like, well, the government said this. And then they're like, I don't understand why they didn't do the thing they said. Well, it's because, like, look at the opposite of the thing. It's probably the opposite of the thing is what they're actually doing. Because, like, why in the... What does China have to gain to come out and be like, yeah, we're running these drills around Taiwan because we're going to invade it? Like, of course not. They're not going to say that. Duh.
DC was asked about it. They said, we are not aware of the details, but China's committed to the path of peaceful development and a defense policy that is defensive in nature. Local Chinese media hasn't reported on it, and the government websites that would normally have information on such a large-scale project turn up nothing. Where there's no smoke, sometimes there's fire.
The general who's skilled in defense hides in the most secret recesses of the earth.
But to find out answers, reporters from the Financial Times tried to access the site on the ground. There were warnings everywhere against using drones or taking photographs, posted everywhere. Popular hiking trails nearby were shut down. Satellite imagery examined by U.S. intelligence shows more than 100 cranes operating simultaneously.
Jesus.
Massive excavation pits and extensive structural reinforcements hammered into the earth. Whenever you hear someone say something like intelligence agencies or security officials like that, that's usually another way of saying the CIA. A construction supervisor who was on his way out of the site refused to comment on the project to the Financial Times reporters. Those reporters, we just say they have giant balls. I'd be terrified that the MSS, China's state security, would snatch me up for asking questions like that around there.
Yeah, why the
if you
fuck
yell
would
loud
you do
enough,
that, dude?
there's no secret military base here. It might make people think there's a secret military base there. The thing is, though, you can't really hide something this big from the eyes in the sky forever. U.S. satellite imagery gives us some actual answers. Victorious warriors win first, and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first, and then seek to win.
Several current U.S. officials said the CIA has been closely monitoring the site since they first broke ground. In that initial step, they cleared the area of any residential buildings, flattening them in preparation for the major construction project. Even though their internet is heavily censored over there by the Chinese Communist Party, we can still see a trace evidence of this in an online forum where a resident asks,
and you show
why
this to the
these
American
villages are being
population so they
demolished.
know what an actual
Don't ask too many
dictatorship looks
questions
like.
unless you want to get gone. The U.S. analysts observed the grid layout, and it appeared that these blue concrete patches that you see there suggest specialized, heavy-duty construction. Then they noticed what looks like a sprawling complex, and by late 2024, satellites showed most major surface buildings were already up.
The fact that you
latest
can
images
speak
from
out
January 2025 show
against
a
the
big
government at
central
will
complex
instantly
with big concrete walls.
makes that
Based on the
argumentation fall
research our
apart.
team has done here, we believe that the construction is being done by the China State Construction Engineering Corporation, working alongside the Military Engineering Corps. This project uses expertise developed through China's massive civilian infrastructure projects, particularly its extensive metro systems and their high-speed rail tunnels. Given its size, conservative estimates state that there's room for over 50,000 personnel at this headquarters. But what we're seeing on the surface is just the tippy tip of the iceberg. The real action is deep under the facility, where China is working on a capability that U.S. intelligence agencies believe points to preparations for World War III. But before that thermonuclear war happens, be sure to go to CappyArmy.com for some of our new merch. According to the 2024 U.S. Department of Defense report, the CCP began expanding its underground facilities in 2011. And this Chinese Pentagon is a prime example of it. They're digging deeper and deeper. The air systems to keep personnel breathing may represent perhaps the most critical and vulnerable component of any underground facility. To address these vulnerabilities, the facility needs to employ sophisticated filtration systems with blast valves protecting intake points. These automatic valves can seal instantly upon detecting pressure waves, preventing blast effects or contaminants from entering the ventilation
crazy how
system.
people
I
find
asked
this
my
stuff out.
producer Armando if he could actually find where these air vents might be located.
So what I did was I literally went in to do a comparative study on each, like how these facilities are built and how they work. And here's like the location, everything that's known about them. If you go to the maps and you see like a road that just suddenly ends, that's how I actually located the entrances. I located the most likely points of entry and shaft placement. I calculated basically like what kind of filters they would have and how often they need to circulate the air. Okay, so I'm just gonna say it like in layman's terms. So basically what we did was, this has been previously modeled. There are names for the way the fallout is gonna go. So we basically took these simulations, determined where the topography was going to enable the wind
all that work they put in
to stay clear of those shafts.
Yeah, because the wind would blow
where
it.
the most likely entry points were going to be.
But China's obsession with going underground actually didn't start with Beijing Military City, you know, this Chinese Pentagon. It began with a single directive from Chairman Mao Zedong himself when he told his people to, quote, dig tunnels deep. It was the late 1960s, and at the time, relations with the Soviet Union and China had deteriorated from friendly communist brotherhood to a pissing match with nuclear powers. Not to mention, American boots were on the ground right next door in Vietnam, and that was escalating. This made Mao particularly worried, as he felt China was surrounded by threats. He became convinced they needed to prepare for the worst. So what followed was...
Dude, that actually... You see what he said? That China was worried because they were getting surrounded by threats? Same thing with Russia.
was escalating. This made Mao particularly worried, as he felt China was surrounded by threats. He became convinced they needed to prepare for the worst. So what followed was perhaps one of the most ambitious civilian tunneling projects in all of Asia's history.
Appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak.
Beneath the streets of Beijing, hundreds of thousands of ordinary Chinese citizens, armed with nothing more sophisticated than shovels, picks, and wheelbarrows, they built an underground city with miles of hand-dug tunnels over 10 meters deep. The network, nicknamed the Underground City, had a capacity ranging from 300,000 people to 6 million people. It had provisions of food, water, ventilation. In the event of a nuclear attack, the plan was to be able to move every single Beijing resident safely underground. Today, the system lays mostly defunct. Some parts of it were refurbished as like cheap hotels. Meanwhile, others were transformed into shopping centers or theaters. Notably, the system was said to reach out to military outposts and connect various command centers. The precedent had been set, though. When they felt threatened, China would go underground. The Chinese Communist Party has a major strategic problem that they need to solve. The US military has a whole fleet of strategic stealth bombers. No one else on Earth has this capability to fly undetected 50,000 feet and drop a big bunker buster on your face. So the Chinese Communist Party is trying to develop a solution to that problem. They've been trying to do this since the first Gulf War, which spooked Chinese leadership. Their top military generals were focused on how US precision bombs picked apart Iraqi command centers and hardened targets like they were nothing. So the PLA got to work on an array of hardened aircraft shelters, HAS for short. Satellite imagery has confirmed that over 400 of these type of shelters are created all over China. But the digging down didn't stop there. They actually doubled down on their quote-unquote underground Great Wall. The underground Great Wall is a vast network of almost 3,000 miles long of tunnels. It was designed to conceal China's growing arsenal of nuclear ICBMs. Beijing created a credible second strike, this capability that ensured their ability to retaliate even after absorbing a first strike. And they kept going at it. By the early 2000s, China's underground ambitions extended beneath the waves and into legitimate Bond villain territory. They had massive underground submarine structures. But China's most critical underground facility until now has been the Xishan, which is approximately 15 miles from central Beijing. This is China's primary joint operation command center, built during the height of the Cold War at a depth of approximately 100 meters. The facility has served as the People's Liberation Army's primary hardened command post for decades. Here in the underground chambers, carved beneath the scenic hills, sits the brain of China's military. But there's a problem: insufficient capacity. The PLA of 2025 simply can't fit its expanded command apparatus and new capabilities into a bunker that was designed for a much simpler, smaller military of the 1970s. And that's the least of its problems. Beyond the vulnerability, the aging facility faces another challenge, a critical flaw, if you will. It wasn't designed to be a secure combat command center by modern standards. Because while China's military might technically be smaller, its capabilities are greater. And the reason why China is building Beijing Military City is because of a critical date that looms large in Chinese military planning, 2027.
That's
the
what
year
it is,
that
2027.
To be fully modernized and ready to invade Taiwan.
And this is part of the reason why I think China is building their own version of the Pentagon today, as a way to unify their commands. Remember, it was only in 2016 that their military even split theater command based on region. It was only recently that their military began combined arms doctrine, where each branch fights in coordination with the other. This is because in the past, the separate branches in China were purposefully kept weak to mitigate the threat of one of them joining forces with the other and overthrowing the government. For these reasons, I think this is at least a major indication of a greater level of cooperation between Chinese military branches than we've ever seen before.
Modern precision-guided bunker-busting munitions have rendered that old facility increasingly vulnerable. So if their current best is outdated and vulnerable, they need something new. They need new digs. When we interpreted our team, when we looked at the images from the deep pits of the central grid of the complex, we used shadow geometry that suggested that the deepest parts were just 130 feet deep, which I found odd. In fact, this congressional report mentions how hardened facilities are safe even from nukes if buried deep enough. The People's Liberation Army Engineering University, Nanjing, conducted a study on the effects of nuclear bunker-busting weapons, which revealed vulnerabilities down to 6,500 feet, which placed into perfect context what one of our experts had to say about this.
We spoke to Yago Rodriguez, who has a PhD in strategic studies. He's one of Europe's most compelling voices in military analysis, who broke it all down for me Barney style.
So from my point of view, they will go as deep as being able to survive a nuclear explosion on the surface of the compound. I think they like a lot the trickery, the diversion tactics, so I think that they will let you see some things and those will be false, so the true extension of their net of tunnels and the deepness of them will be even bigger for sure.
And here's the real head scratcher. These kind of sites are usually built in very hard rock, like the US did and the Russians did with their big, massive underground facilities. However, this site is built on limestone, dolomite, and carbonate rock, all considered to be much
Carbonated
softer and
rock?
less suitable for deep tunneling and hard construction. Why
Carbonated
do
rock.
it there then? It's likely a calculated gamble. Soft rock is way easier and faster to excavate.
I like hard
Think
rock, though.
digging through drywall versus solid granite. And crucially, some engineers believe softer rock might actually absorb and dampen the shock waves from a nearby explosion better than hard rock, which tends to transmit shock very efficiently. It's like the difference between hitting a brick wall and a steel plate. The brick gives, right? While the steel rings your bell. It's a fierce debate in the bunker building world. Shock absorption versus inherent strength. China's known for cutting
That's a
corners
good
in their
point.
production, but when it comes to their high priority new
No, they're
military
not-
headquarters,
they're not
they would
cutting
spare
there.
no expense. They're likely using ultra high performance concrete, which isn't your sidewalk mix. It's concrete on steroids, 10 times stronger than the regular stuff. But how do you get thousands of people in and out of the facility without creating a giant bomb here sign on the surface? To get you the inside scoop, our producer Armando reached out to Ron Hubbard, who runs Atlas Survival Shelters. This guy creates bomb shelters with a team of advisors who have actually worked on the equivalent US underground bunker sites.
You don't access them from the top. You access them from underground from the side. So you basically are going to enter it from some mountain hundreds of miles away. You're going to get on a high-speed train. They're going to have a large boring machine. They may start off at 100 feet underground, and the tunnel may just angle down to where it ends up at 6,000 feet.
They're using massive tunnel boring machines, like the one that dug out the Channel Tunnel, potentially starting the tunnel entrance miles and miles away and then gently sloping down.
They're going to enter it through train. They're not going to come down from the top. It's not like there's an elevator that's going to go down. They're going to enter from the side, of course. Yeah, that's just common sense. But you will not ever be able to go there and find a super high-speed elevator. I would not think they would, because that's basically leaving an exposed shaft right to the surface.
But who gets the benefit from all these high-tech hardenings? It's designed to ensure the continuity of government, what's called COG, or maybe more accurately, continuity of the Communist Party, and continuity of command for the People's Liberation Army. This structure actually closely mirrors past American efforts at the concept of continuity of government. If you look at sites like Raven Rock and Mount Weather, these were designed to preserve constitutional authority during catastrophic events. Therefore, the guest list is exclusive, including the core leadership, Xi Jinping, of course, at the top Central Military Commission brass. Beijing Military City isn't just an isolated fortress, but a major hardened node in a vast classified underground network designed for leadership mobility and redundant command. To me, it shows an interesting contrast in strategy compared to the United States approach. These reports come at the same time as the US military building a massive next-generation air defense Golden Dome, as it's called. These both appear to be preparations for a great power military conflict, but with very different approaches. The construction of Beijing Military City isn't just a military infrastructure project, it's a strategic signal to the world, particularly the United States, by investing enormous resources in this facility. China's making a clear statement that it's preparing for the possibility of high-intensity conflict that could escalate to nuclear threshold. A directive to be ready by 2027 invasion barges and a giant command center, and this huge underground network that'll all be finished and coalesce by 2027. All of this is evidence that even if China doesn't pull the trigger, they're definitely building the gun. If you want to support this completely independent venture, you can go to CappyArmy.com for our Patreon Pepperbox
good video.
and merch links. There's exclusive, uncensored content available for you. Thank you guys, it means everything to us.
Oh, that's it? Oh, come on, chat. All right, time to do some... Oh, my God, it's 1. Time to do some wheeze. Thanks for hanging out. Probably be back tomorrow. It went a little bit longer, but I wanted to finish that video. Have a meep and squeak. Wait, tomorrow's Wednesday. We'll see. If I'm here, I'm here. If I'm not, I'm not. All right, we'll catch you later. Have a lunchbox.